A waitress returns $1,000 to a crime lord, and it destroys her life. When Nora Quinn finds an envelope of cash left behind by the city's most dangerous man, she has 10 seconds to decide. Take the money that would save her dying brother, or do the impossible and give it back. Her choice triggers a chain reaction that will pull her from poverty into a world of violence, betrayal, and power she never wanted to understand. This is a story about survival, morality, and what happens when someone who has nothing refuses to become nothing. If you're watching from your city, drop a comment below. Let me see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's begin. The fluorescent lights in Rosie's diner had been dying for 3 years, same as everything else in this part of the city. They flickered in rhythm with Nora Quinn's pulse as she wiped down the same cracked vinyl booth for the 4th time that hour, her rag moving in mechanical circles that required no thought, no presence, just motion. The coffee in the pot behind the counter had been burning since 4 p.m. It was now past 9. The smell had stopped registering to her somewhere around year 2 of this job. 23 years old, and she moved like someone twice that age, her shoulders carrying weight that had nothing to do with the plates she balanced or the trays she hauled. Every step was calculated economy. No wasted energy, no unnecessary movements. Survival had taught her to ration everything, even the way she walked. The diner held maybe a dozen people scattered across booths and counter stools, each one isolated in their own bubble of late-night existence. A truck driver nursing his 5th cup of coffee. 2 teenagers in the corner booth trying to make a single order of fries last until midnight. An elderly woman who came in every Tuesday and Thursday, always ordered tea, never drank more than half. Nora knew them all by their patterns, not their names. Names required a kind of attention she couldn't afford. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She didn't need to check it. She knew it was Danny. Knew it was probably another message about the medication running low, about the bills stacking up, about the fear that lived permanent in his 16-year-old voice now. The fear that said, "What happens when you can't keep us above water anymore?" Nora had $847 in her bank account. Rent was due in 4 days, $1,100. Danny's prescription refill was $340, and that was with the discount pharmacy across town that made her wait in line for 2 hours every month. The electric bill notice had come stamped in red yesterday. The math didn't work. It hadn't worked in months. She'd been running on borrowed time and maxed credit cards, juggling which disaster to address first, which crisis could wait another week. The diner door chimed. Nora didn't look up immediately. Customer entrances were just another part of the ambient noise, like the hiss of the griddle or Frank's heavy breathing from the kitchen. But something shifted in the air, some change in pressure that made her glance toward the entrance. And everything stopped. The man who walked through that door didn't belong in Rosie's diner. He didn't belong in this neighborhood, this zip code, this reality. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than Nora made in 6 months. Tailored so precisely, it looked like it had been designed specifically for the body wearing it. His shoes caught the dying fluorescent light and reflected it back with a polish that seemed obscene in this setting. But it wasn't the clothes that made the room go quiet. It was the way he moved, controlled, precise. Every step deliberate, his dark eyes scanning the space with the kind of attention that missed nothing. Exits, cameras, faces, hands. He was reading the room like a predator reads terrain, calculating threat levels and escape routes in the seconds it took him to cross from door to booth. The truck driver suddenly found his coffee very interesting. The teenagers went silent mid-sentence. Even the elderly woman with her tea seemed to shrink into her corner. Nora felt her breath catch in her chest. She knew who this was. Everyone in the city knew, even if they'd never seen him in person. Dante Moretti. The name that made lawyers nervous and made cops look the other way. The man who controlled half the commerce flowing through the port, who owned legitimate businesses and illegitimate empires with equal ease, whose word carried more weight than any law ever written. And he was walking directly toward her section. Frank Torres materialized from the kitchen, his manager's vest stained with grease and panic. He moved to Nora's side with uncharacteristic speed, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow contained a scream. "That's Dante Moretti." "I know," Nora said quietly. "You serve him. You smile. You don't fuck this up." Frank's hand gripped her forearm, his fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. "You understand me? Whatever he wants, he gets. Fast. Perfect. No mistakes." Nora pulled her arm free, her skin already showing the marks where his fingers had been. I understand. She understood more than Frank thought. She understood that men like Dante Moretti didn't just walk into diners like this. She understood that his presence here meant something had gone wrong in his carefully controlled world. She understood that she was about to serve coffee to the most dangerous man in the city, and if she screwed it up, Frank would throw her out on the street before morning. She grabbed a coffee pot with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. She'd trained that response out of herself years ago, and approached the booth where Dante had seated himself. He'd chosen the corner position, back to the wall, clear sightline to both the entrance and the kitchen. Professional positioning. The kind of awareness that came from surviving in a world where threats were constant and trust was currency. Coffee? Nora's voice came out steady. Small miracle. Dante looked up at her, and for a second she felt the full weight of that attention. His eyes were dark, nearly black in the dim light, and they moved over her face with the same calculating precision he'd used on the room. Reading her, assessing threat level. Then something in his expression shifted, some internal assessment completed. Black, he said. His voice was rougher than she expected, carrying an edge like gravel under leather. And keep it coming, Nora poured. Her hand stayed steady through sheer force of will. She set the cup down without spilling a drop, and was turning to leave when his phone rang. The ringtone cut through the diner's ambient noise like a blade. Dante answered on the first ring, his posture changing instantly, the controlled predator giving way to something more raw. Talk to me. A pause. Then his entire body went rigid. What hospital? Nora should have walked away, should have given him privacy. But something in his voice pinned her in place, a kind of fear that transcended the criminal empire, the expensive suit, the dangerous reputation. How bad? Another pause. His free hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles going white. I'm coming now. Keep him stable. I don't care what it costs. Keep him alive. The call ended. Dante sat frozen for 3 seconds that felt like minutes, his breathing controlled but his jaw working like he was physically chewing through shock. Then he was moving, standing, pulling out his wallet with mechanical precision. He threw $300 bills on the table. For the coffee, he said to no one in particular, his voice somewhere between his earlier control and complete fracture. Then he was walking toward the exit, moving faster now, the careful predator giving way to something more human and more desperate. The door chimed his exit. The diner breathed again. Nora stood there holding the coffee pot, staring at the booth where 3 crisp $100 bills sat next to an untouched cup of coffee. For coffee that cost $2.50. The math was absurd. Frank appeared at her elbow, his hand already reaching for the cash. I'll take that, he said, his voice carrying the entitled certainty of a man who believed tips belonged to management when the amounts got large enough. He left it for me, Nora heard herself say. The words came out before she could stop them, before survival instinct could override pride. Frank's expression went cold. You want to argue about this? Right now? When I just watched you stand there gawking at a customer instead of doing your damn job? Nora's phone buzzed again in her pocket. Danny, the medication, the rent, the electric bill, the math that didn't work. Take it, she said quietly, and walked away to clear the booth. The bills disappeared into Frank's pocket. Nora approached the table with her cleaning rag and a bus tub, her movements automatic again, muscle memory taking over while her mind went elsewhere. $300. Gone in seconds. That was rent covered with money left over. That was Danny's prescription and maybe the electric bill too. She started clearing the untouched coffee cup, wiping down the table, checking under the seat for anything left behind. People left things all the time, phones and wallets and keys, small disasters waiting to happen. Her hand found the envelope. White, standard letter size, unsealed. Nora pulled it out slowly, her heart starting a different rhythm now, something faster and more dangerous. The envelope had weight, substance. She knew before opening it what she would find, but the knowing didn't prepare her for the reality. She tilted it open just enough to see inside. Cash. Bills stacked thick and neat. She could see the denominations, hundreds, 50s, 20s, a lot of them. Her hands started shaking now, the control she'd maintained finally breaking down. She glanced around the diner. No one was watching. The security camera in the corner had been broken for 8 months. Frank kept saying he'd fix it, but the budget never materialized. The truck driver was paying his bill at the register. The teenagers were absorbed in their phones. The elderly woman had left while Nora was dealing with Frank. No witnesses. She pulled the envelope fully out from under the seat and quickly moved it into her bus tub, covering it with used napkins and a dirty plate. Her pulse hammered so hard she could feel it in her temples. She finished clearing the booth on autopilot, her movements steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. She carried the bus tub to the back, into the kitchen where Frank was already counting his $300 with the focused attention of a man performing a sacred ritual. "I'm taking my break," Nora said. Frank didn't look up. 5 minutes. Nora pushed through the back door into the alley behind the diner. The night air hit her like cold water, sharp and clarifying. She set the bus tub down on an overturned crate and pulled out the envelope with hands that had moved past shaking into something steadier and more dangerous. She opened it fully. The cash inside was neatly organized, sorted by denomination. She started counting, her lips moving silently with the numbers. Hundreds, 50s, 20s, some 10s. The total climbed higher than any number she'd held in her hands before. $1,000. Exactly. Nora stared at the bills, her breath coming shallow and fast. $1,000. That was rent, covered completely with no late fee. That was Danny's medication for 3 months. That was the electric bill and the water bill, and maybe even fixing the check engine light that had been glowing in her car for 6 weeks. That was breathing room. That was survival. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out with numb fingers. "Danny." "Hey, pharmacy called. They said my refill is ready, but insurance denied the claim again. I tried calling them, but got put on hold for 40 minutes, and then they hung up on me. I don't know what to do." Nora closed her eyes. The envelope felt heavy in her other hand. $1,000. Right there. Right now. No waiting, no bureaucracy, no phone trees that led nowhere. The back door opened. Maria Santos, another waitress on shift, stepped into the alley holding a cigarette that she hadn't lit yet. She saw Nora, saw the envelope, and her expression shifted through several emotions in quick succession: surprise, understanding, calculation. "Holy shit," Maria said quietly. "Is that from the guy in the suit?" Nora didn't answer, couldn't answer. Her throat had closed up. Maria came closer, lowering her voice. "How much?" 1,000, Nora heard herself whisper. Jesus. Maria pulled out her lighter, flicked it to life, touched it to her cigarette. She took a long drag, her eyes never leaving the envelope. "You know who that was, right?" "That was Dante Moretti." "I know." "So this is," Maria gestured with her cigarette, "this is his money." "He left it in the booth." "Did he leave it, or did he drop it?" Maria's voice was careful now, walking a line between truth and rationalization. "Because if he dropped it, and you return it, you're just doing the right thing. But if he left it, why would he leave $1,000 in a diner booth?" Maria shrugged. "Why does a guy like that do anything? Maybe it's pocket change to him. Maybe he was distracted. Did you hear that phone call? Something bad happened. Something with his kid." Nora had heard. She'd heard the fear in his voice, the barely controlled panic. She'd seen the way he moved from predator to father in the span of a sentence. His son. Hospital. Critical condition. "He's got bigger problems than $1,000, Maria said, her voice getting softer, more persuasive. "And you've got rent due in 4 days. You've got Danny's medication. You've got... How much you got on your credit cards right now?" "Maxed," Nora said numbly. "Right. So this..." Maria gestured to the envelope again. "This is the universe giving you a break. This is karma or fate or whatever you want to call it. This is the one time the math actually works in your favor. You going to tell me you're not going to take it?" Nora stared at the money. In her pocket, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Danny, probably. Another reminder of the weight pressing down on both of them. The constant pressure of trying to survive in a city that actively worked against survival. "Frank would never know," Maria continued. "The camera's broken. No one saw where he was sitting except you and me, and I'm not saying shit. You take this money, you pay your rent, you get Danny his medication, and you keep your head above water for another month. That's it. That's the whole moral calculus. Your survival versus returning money to a man who won't even notice it's gone." It made sense. It made perfect sense. The logic was airtight, the rationalization complete. Dante Moretti was a multimillionaire who controlled criminal enterprises worth more than Nora would make in 10 lifetimes. $1,000 was nothing to him, less than nothing, a rounding error. But to her, it was everything. Nora looked at the envelope in her hands, at the neatly organized bills that represented the difference between making it through the month and complete collapse. She thought about Danny waiting at home, probably checking his phone every 5 minutes to see if she'd responded yet. She thought about the pharmacy that would only hold his medication for 3 days before putting it back on the shelf. She thought about their landlord, who'd made it very clear that one more late payment meant eviction. Then she thought about Dante Moretti on the phone, the fear in his voice, his son in the hospital, critical condition. She thought about 3 years ago, when Danny had been hospitalized with pneumonia that turned into something worse, something the doctors had struggled to identify while his fever climbed higher and his breathing got shallower. She remembered sitting in that waiting room, watching the minutes crawl past, feeling completely helpless while her little brother fought for his life in a room she couldn't enter. She remembered the fear, the specific, paralyzing fear of waiting to find out if someone you love is going to survive the night. Nora closed the envelope. "I have to give it back," she said. Maria's expression cycled through disbelief, frustration, and something almost like pity. "Are you insane?" "Probably." "Nora, listen to me." "I can't keep it." The words came out stronger now, more certain. "I know how this sounds. I know what I'm giving up, but I can't." She stopped, searching for words that could explain what she was feeling. His kid is in the hospital. He was terrified. I heard it in his voice. And if this money matters to him right now, if he's looking for it, if he needs it for something— "He's a millionaire," Maria cut in. "He doesn't need this money. He probably has 10 times this amount in his wallet right now." "Maybe, but it's not mine," Nora looked at Maria directly. "I know that sounds stupid. I know I need it more than he does. I know this solves every problem I have right now, but it's not mine." Maria took another long drag on her cigarette, her expression shifting into something harder. "You're making a mistake. Probably. A big one. The kind you don't come back from." "I know." Maria shook her head slowly. "Don't say I didn't warn you." She dropped her cigarette, ground it out with her heel, and walked back inside without another word. Nora stood alone in the alley, holding an envelope that contained the solution to every crisis currently dismantling her life, and made the decision that would change everything. She had to find Dante Moretti. She pulled out her phone, ignoring Danny's messages for now. She'd deal with that guilt later, and opened the browser. Typed in Dante Moretti, and waited while the results loaded. There wasn't much. Men like him didn't maintain social media profiles, but there were news articles, business registrations, photographs from charity events and city council meetings. She scrolled through, looking for anything that might help. A photo from 2 years ago showed him at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new restaurant downtown. The caption identified several people in the shot, including Dante Moretti and son, Lucas Moretti, 14 kids. Lucas, 14. Which meant he'd be 16 now, same age as Danny. Another article mentioned Moretti Holdings, his legitimate business empire. Office buildings, restaurants, real estate. Nothing about where he lived or what hospital his son might be in. Nora's break was almost over. She shoved the envelope into her jacket pocket, too large to fit comfortably, the edge sticking out, and went back inside. Frank was waiting by the register, his arms crossed, his expression dangerous. "Your break was 5 minutes. That was 12. "Sorry." "You got tables waiting." "I'll get to them." "You'll get to them now, or you'll get out of my diner." Nora bit back the response that wanted to come out. "Your diner." "You're the manager, Frank, not the owner," and moved past him to check her section. 2 new tables had been seated. She grabbed menus, pasted on the smile that her job required, and went through the motions. Order taken, coffee poured, food delivered. The envelope in her pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric, marking her, making everyone who looked at her somehow aware of what she was carrying. She checked her phone whenever she had a spare moment, searching for more information. Hospitals in the area, private medical centers, places where a man like Dante Moretti would take his critically injured son. There was a hospital in the financial district, St. Catherine's, known for treating wealthy clients. Private rooms, exclusive care, the kind of place where money opened doors that remained closed to everyone else. If Lucas Moretti was anywhere, it would be there. Nora's shift ended at midnight. She clocked out, avoiding Frank's eye, and walked to her car in the employee lot behind the diner. The Honda Civic was 11 years old, running on prayer and determination, the check engine light a constant companion. She slid behind the wheel, the envelope still in her jacket, and sat there for a moment trying to process what she was about to do. She was going to drive to a hospital in the financial district, a part of the city she had no business being in, and try to return $1,000 to a crime lord who may or may not remember leaving it behind. The sheer insanity of it was almost beautiful. She started the car. The engine turned over reluctantly, protesting the late hour and the cold. She pulled out of the lot and headed east, toward the part of the city where buildings scraped the sky and money moved in amounts she couldn't comprehend. The drive took 40 minutes. Traffic was light this time of night, just the usual collection of taxis and late-shift workers and people whose reasons for being out past midnight were their own business. Nora kept her speed exactly at the limit, hyper-aware of the envelope in her pocket, imagining what a cop would think if they pulled her over and found $1,000 in cash. St. Catherine's Hospital rose against the night sky like a monument to wealth, all glass and steel and architectural ambition. The main entrance was lit up bright enough to hurt, the kind of lighting that said we can afford to waste electricity on aesthetics. Nora pulled into the visitor parking lot and sat there for a moment, her hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. This was insane. This was beyond insane. She was a waitress from the East Side, walking into a hospital for millionaires, trying to find a man who controlled half the criminal enterprise in the city so she could give him back money that would solve every problem in her life. Maria was right. This was a mistake, the kind you don't come back from. Nora got out of the car. The night air was different here, cleaner somehow, like even the oxygen cost more in this neighborhood. She walked toward the entrance, the envelope burning in her pocket, her heart hammering a rhythm that felt like a countdown to disaster. The lobby was all marble and hushed voices, more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. A security guard stood by the main desk, his posture suggesting he was more than just decoration. Nora approached the reception desk, where a woman in her 50s looked up with the kind of professional smile that said, "You don't belong here. Can I help you?" The smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm looking for someone," Nora said. "Lucas Moretti. He was admitted tonight, critical condition." The receptionist's expression shifted microscopically, a flicker of recognition, then careful neutrality. "Are you family?" "No, Nora stopped. What was she? A waitress returning lost property? A good Samaritan making terrible decisions? "I have something that belongs to his father. It's important." Visiting hours ended at 9. The professional smile was back, firmer now. "You can return during regular hours tomorrow." "This can't wait." "I'm sorry, but hospital policy." "Please." Nora leaned forward, dropping her voice. "His father left something at my work. Something important. I need to get it to him tonight." The receptionist studied her for a long moment, performing some kind of internal calculation. Then she picked up a phone, turned slightly away, and spoke in tones too quiet for Nora to hear. The security guard shifted his position slightly, his attention now fully on Nora. This was going wrong. She could feel it happening, the situation slipping out of her control like water through fingers. She should leave. Should walk out right now before this got worse. She had tried. That was enough. She could tell herself she tried. The receptionist hung up the phone and looked at Nora with an expression that was harder to read now. "Someone will be down to speak with you shortly. Please have a seat." Nora moved to the waiting area, her legs feeling unsteady, and sat in a chair that probably cost more than her car. The security guard maintained his position by the desk, his eyes tracking her movements. She pulled out her phone to check the time, 12:47 a.m., and found 3 more messages from Danny. "Danny, did you talk to the pharmacy?" "Danny, I'm getting worried. My inhaler is almost empty." "Danny, are you okay?" She started typing a response, then stopped. What could she say? "I'm in a hospital for rich people trying to return $1,000 that we desperately need to a mob boss because I'm apparently incapable of making rational decisions when under stress." She deleted the half-written message and pocketed her phone. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The lobby remained quiet except for the ambient sounds of a hospital at night. Distant beeping, soft footsteps, the hum of expensive HVAC systems. Nora's hands were sweating. She wiped them on her jeans and tried to look like someone who belonged in a place like this. The elevator chimed. Two men emerged, not hospital staff. They wore suits similar to Dante's, expensive, well-tailored, designed to project authority. They moved with the same controlled precision, the same awareness of surroundings and threat assessment. They walked directly to Nora. "You're here about Mr. Moretti?" The one who spoke was maybe 40, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that missed nothing. Nora stood. "Yes, I have something that belongs to him." "What kind of something?" She pulled the envelope from her pocket. Both men's expressions changed instantly, their attention sharpening in a way that made Nora's survival instincts scream at her to run. "Where did you get that?" The second man, younger, had moved his hand inside his jacket. "Gun, probably." "He left it at the diner where I work, in a booth. I think he forgot it when he got the phone call about his son." The two men exchanged a look that contained an entire conversation. Then the first one held out his hand. "We'll make sure he gets it." Something in Nora resisted. She'd come this far, driven across the city, walked into this place, waited in this lobby. Handing the envelope to these men felt wrong somehow, incomplete. "I'd like to give it to him personally," she heard herself say. Both men's expressions hardened. "That's not how this works," the first man said, his voice dropping into a register that suggested the conversation was over. You need to hand over the envelope and leave. Now." The security guard had moved closer. The receptionist was watching with the careful attention of someone witnessing something potentially violent. Nora looked at the envelope in her hand, then at the two men whose body language screamed threat despite their expensive suits and professional demeanor. She thought about turning around and walking out. Thought about going home to Danny, taking the money, paying the rent, getting the medication, surviving another month. Instead, she said, "No." The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. "Excuse me?" The first man's voice went very quiet. "I need to give this to him personally. I need to explain how it was found. She stopped, searching for words that wouldn't get her thrown out, or worse. "I just need 5 minutes, that's all." The two men stared at her like she'd just announced her intention to fly by, flapping her arms. The absurdity of the situation, a broke waitress refusing to hand over an envelope to armed security in a hospital lobby past midnight, would have been funny if Nora weren't genuinely terrified. The first man pulled out his phone, turned away, and made a quick call. Nora couldn't hear the words, but she could read the body language. Disbelief, followed by reluctant compliance. He turned back to her. "Come with us." They led her to the elevator. The doors closed, trapping her in a small space with two men who could make her disappear, and no one would ever know what happened. The elevator climbed smoothly, the numbers ticking up past the normal floors into the double digits where rich people died in comfort. 15th floor. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked nothing like a hospital. Private suites, hushed luxury, the kind of medical care where death came with thread count and room service. They walked past closed doors and silent nurses' stations until they reached a suite at the end of the hall. Two more men in suits stood guard outside. The men escorting Nora stopped, spoke in low voices with the guards, and then one of them knocked softly. "Come in." The voice came muffled through the door, but Nora recognized it. The same rough edge, the same gravel under leather quality from the diner. The door opened, and Nora Quinn walked into a room that would change the trajectory of her entire life. The room smelled like antiseptic and expensive cologne fighting for dominance. Medical equipment beeped softly in the background, a rhythm that measured someone's heartbeat, someone's survival. The suite was large, more hotel than hospital, with a separate sitting area where Dante Moretti stood by the window, his back to the door, his silhouette sharp against the city lights beyond. He didn't turn when they entered. "Mr. Moretti," one of the security men said. "The woman from the diner, she insisted on seeing you personally." Dante's shoulders shifted slightly, the only acknowledgement he'd heard. "Leave us." The two men hesitated. Nora could feel their reluctance, their professional instinct warring with their orders. Then they backed out, closing the door with a soft click that sounded impossibly loud in the quiet room. Nora stood there holding the envelope, suddenly aware of how she must look. Diner uniform still on, cheap jacket, hair pulled back in a ponytail that had started the shift neat and was now falling apart. She smelled like burnt coffee and fryer grease. Her shoes squeaked slightly on the polished floor. "You followed me." Dante's voice came flat, emotionless. He still hadn't turned around. "You left this." Nora held up the envelope even though he couldn't see it. Her hand shook slightly. "In the booth. After the phone call. So you drove across the city, found out where my son is being treated, got past hospital security, and demanded to see me." Now he turned, and the face that met hers was nothing like the controlled predator from the diner. This was a man who'd been running on adrenaline and fear for hours. The expensive suit rumpled, his tie loosened, dark circles under eyes that burned with exhaustion and something more dangerous. At 1 a.m. to return money. Yes, Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a sound with no humor in it at all. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both." He crossed the room in 3 steps, moving fast enough that Nora's instinct screamed at her to back up. But there was nowhere to go. He stopped close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath from the cup he'd never drunk, could see the fine lines around his eyes that spoke of years navigating violence. He held out his hand. "Give it to me." Nora handed over the envelope. Her fingers brushed his briefly. His skin was warm, almost hot, like he was running a fever. He took the envelope and opened it right there, counting the bills with practiced speed, his lips moving silently with the numbers. $1,000. Exactly. He looked up at her, and his expression had shifted into something colder, more calculating. "You counted it." "Yes." "But you didn't take any." "No." "Why not?" The question hung between them. Nora could feel her pulse hammering in her throat. This was the moment where truth mattered, where the wrong words would end everything. "Because it wasn't mine," she said. Dante's eyes narrowed. "You work in a diner. You make what? Minimum wage plus tips?" "Plus tips. And you found $1,000. More money than you probably make in a month. And your first instinct was to give it back." He said it like he was describing something impossible, a violation of natural law. "To me. To someone who wouldn't notice if it was gone." "Your son is in the hospital," Nora said quietly. "I heard the phone call. I heard your voice. And I thought, if this money matters to you right now, if you need it for something, if you're looking for it—" "I'm worth $50 million, Dante cut in, his voice sharp. "Probably more depending on which assets you count. I have access to more cash than you'll see in your entire life. $1,000 is nothing, less than nothing." "Then why do you look so angry that I brought it back?" The words came out before Nora could stop them. She watched Dante's expression shift, saw something flicker behind his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Because people don't do this," he said finally. "People don't return money to me. They take. They steal. They find angles and leverage and ways to get more, but they don't—" He stopped, his jaw working. "You're playing some kind of game. You want something." "I don't want anything. Everyone wants something. I wanted to give back what wasn't mine. That's it. That's the whole story." Dante studied her face like he was reading code, looking for the hidden message, the trap, the angle. The silence stretched out between them, filled only by the steady beeping of medical equipment from the other room where his son was fighting to stay alive. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Nora Quinn." "You worked tonight, Nora Quinn. You worked a full shift, then drove across the city to return money you desperately need. Why?" "I told you." "Tell me the truth." His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "The real truth. Not the noble bullshit. Why did you really come here?" Nora felt something crack inside her chest. The exhaustion, the fear, the weight of every decision that had brought her to this moment, it all came flooding up at once. "Because 3 years ago my brother was in a hospital," she heard herself say, the words tumbling out fast and raw. "He was 14. Pneumonia turned into something worse. They couldn't figure out what. His fever kept climbing and his breathing got worse, and I sat in a waiting room just like the one downstairs, watching the minutes crawl by, not knowing if he was going to make it through the night. Her voice cracked. She pushed through it. And I heard your voice on that phone call. I heard the fear. And I couldn't keep money that you might need when your son is in there fighting for his life. I just couldn't. The words hung in the air between them. Dante's expression had shifted again, the calculation giving way to something more human and more dangerous. Your brother, he said quietly. He survived? Yes, barely. We got lucky. The doctors finally figured out what it was, got him the right antibiotics. Nora wiped at her eyes, angry at herself for crying in front of this man. But I remember what those hours felt like. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Not even... She stopped. Not even someone like me, Dante finished. His voice had lost some of its edge, gone softer somehow. He looked down at the envelope in his hands. My son Lucas was jumped outside his school, 3 older boys. They beat him with a baseball bat, fractured his skull, broke his ribs, punctured a lung. They left him in the parking lot. Nora felt the air leave her lungs. I'm so sorry. The doctors say he'll live. Probably. If there's no brain swelling, if the lung heals right, if a dozen other things go the way they're supposed to. Dante's hands tightened on the envelope, crushing it slightly. He's 16 years old. He likes computers and terrible music, and he's never hurt anyone in his life. And they beat him like an animal because of who his father is. The pain in his voice was so raw it hurt to hear. Nora understood in that moment that she was seeing something few people ever saw. Dante Moretti stripped of all the armor, all the control, reduced to just a father watching his child suffer. The money, Dante said, looking at the envelope. I was going to use it to pay a source, someone who knows who did this. Who ordered it? He looked up at her. Because this wasn't random, Nora Quinn. This was a message. A move in a game I didn't know I was playing. Someone wanted to hurt me through my son. Someone inside my organization. Inside? Nora's mind raced through the implications. You mean someone you trust. Trusted. His voice went cold again. Past tense. And when I find out who, they're going to wish they'd never been born. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Nora could see the shift happening in real time, the grieving father disappearing, the predator returning. This was the man who controlled criminal empires, who made problems disappear, who survived in a world where trust was currency and betrayal was death. I should go, Nora said quietly. I've taken up enough of your time. Wait. Dante set the envelope down on a side table, then turned back to her. You said you work at Rosie's Diner. That piece of shit place on 7th? Yes. How much do you make? Real numbers. Nora hesitated. Why does that matter? Answer the question. Minimum wage, $9.50 an hour. Tips average maybe $40, $50 a shift if I'm lucky. Less when it's slow. And you have a brother who needs medication. It wasn't a question, but Nora answered anyway. Yes, Danny, he's 16. Chronic asthma, some other complications. The medication is expensive even with insurance. What's your rent? I don't see why, what's your rent? $1,100, due in 3 days. Dante pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. And the medication costs how much monthly? About $340 with the discount pharmacy. More if I use the closer one. He typed more numbers. His expression was unreadable. Then he looked up at her with eyes that had shifted into full calculation mode. You gave back $1,000 that would have solved all those problems. Rent, medication, probably more. You gave it back to a stranger who didn't need it, who wouldn't have missed it, who you'll probably never see again. He pocketed his phone. That kind of integrity is rare, especially in this city, especially from people who are desperate. I'm not looking for praise, Nora said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. I did what I thought was right. That's all. I'm not praising you. I'm trying to figure out what the hell to do with you. You don't have to do anything with me. I'm leaving. Nora turned toward the door. Your manager at the diner, Frank Torres. He fired you tonight, didn't he? Nora froze, her hand on the door handle. She turned slowly. How did you? I made some calls while you were in the lobby, found out who you are, where you work, what your situation looks like. Frank Torres has a reputation. He saw that envelope, didn't he? Saw the money I left? Took it for himself, then fired you for something petty, so you couldn't complain about it later. The accuracy was unsettling. That's pretty much exactly what happened. So you're unemployed now. Rent due in 3 days. Brother needs medication. No job. No way to pay for any of it. Dante crossed his arms. And you still gave the money back. What else was I supposed to do? Keep it. Use it. Survive. That's what 99% of people would have done. That's what I would have done at your age. I'm not you. No. Dante looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. You're definitely not. The door to the bedroom area opened. A nurse emerged, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and professional efficiency. She glanced at Nora, then focused on Dante. Mr. Moretti, Lucas is asking for you. Dante's entire demeanor changed instantly. The predator vanished, replaced by the father. How is he? Stable. The swelling is going down. Dr. Harrison is optimistic, but he wants to keep him sedated for another few hours to let the body heal. I'll be right there. Dante waited until the nurse had gone back inside, then turned to Nora. I need to go. But this conversation isn't finished. There's nothing else to say. There's a lot else to say, but not tonight. He pulled out his wallet, extracted a business card, and handed it to her. That's my private number. Not the office line, not the assistant. Me. You call it tomorrow, 11 a.m. We'll talk. Nora looked at the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, simple and expensive. Talk about what? About the fact that you're unemployed and broke, and I might have a solution to that problem. About the fact that you did something tonight that no one in my world would ever do. About... He stopped, something flickering across his face. Just call the number, Nora Quinn, 11 a.m. And if I don't? Dante smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Then you go back to your life and I go back to mine, and we never see each other again. But I don't think you'll do that. Why not? Because you drove across the city at midnight to give money back to a stranger. Because you make terrible financial decisions based on doing the right thing. Because you're curious now. He moved toward the bedroom where his son was. 11 a.m. Don't be late. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, leaving Nora standing alone in the suite holding a business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She looked at it for a long moment. Then she pocketed it and left. The 2 security men were waiting outside. They escorted her back to the elevator without a word, rode down with her in silence, walked her to the lobby. The receptionist watched her leave with an expression that contained recognition now. She'd been vetted, approved, marked as someone who had access. Nora pushed through the main doors into the night air. It was nearly 2 a.m. The city felt different now, charged somehow, like the world had shifted while she'd been inside and nothing would ever quite line up the same way again. She walked to her car, got in, and sat there for several minutes trying to process what had just happened. Then she pulled out her phone and saw 7 more messages from Danny. She called him. He answered on the first ring. Where the hell have you been? I've been texting you for hours. I know, I'm sorry. Something came up at work. Something that took until 2 a.m? Danny's voice was sharp with worry and anger mixed together. I thought something happened to you. Nothing happened. I'm fine. I'm on my way home now. Did you talk to the pharmacy about my medication? Nora closed her eyes. The envelope was gone. The money that could have paid for 3 months of prescriptions had been returned to a multimillionaire who barely noticed it existed. She'd made the right choice. She knew she'd made the right choice. It didn't make this conversation any easier. Not yet, she said, but I will tomorrow, I promise. Nora, I'm down to my last inhaler. If I run out, you won't run out. I'll figure it out. I always do. Silence on the other end. Then Danny's voice came back quieter, more tired. You got fired tonight, didn't you? How did you, Maria called. Said Frank was being a dick, and you got let go for some bullshit reason. A pause. Is that true? Yeah, it's true. Jesus, Nora, Danny's voice cracked. What are we going to do? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Just give me until tomorrow, okay? Let me think. Tomorrow is when rent is due. I know. And my medication. I know, Danny. I know all of it. I know exactly how bad this is. But panicking right now doesn't help either of us. Nora rubbed her eyes, exhaustion crashing over her in waves. Just trust me, okay? Can you do that? Another pause. Okay. But Nora? Yeah? Whatever you're thinking of doing, Whatever plan you're making, please don't do anything stupid. Nora looked at the business card sitting on her passenger seat, at the embossed name and the private number that connected directly to one of the most dangerous men in the city. Too late for that, she muttered. What? Nothing. I'll be home in 40 minutes. Go to sleep. She hung up before he could argue, started the car, and drove home through empty streets while her mind raced through possibilities and consequences and the steadily narrowing space between survival and disaster. The apartment was dark when she arrived. Danny had left a single lamp on in the living room, his way of making sure she didn't walk into complete darkness. She locked the door behind her, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed on the couch without bothering to change out of her work clothes. Sleep didn't come. She lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with Dante Moretti over and over. His words, his expression, the way he looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You make terrible financial decisions based on doing the right thing. He wasn't wrong. I might have a solution to that problem. What kind of solution? A job? Charity? Something worse? Nora pulled out the business card and stared at it in the dim light. Dante Moretti. Private number. 11 a.m. She could throw it away. Could ignore the call and go back to the desperate scramble of finding another job, dodging bills, rationing medication. Could pretend tonight never happened. But that option felt like a door closing, like watching the last light go out in a room. She set the card on the coffee table and closed her eyes. Tomorrow. She'd decide tomorrow. Sleep finally came around 4 a.m., thin and restless and full of dreams she couldn't quite remember when her alarm went off at 9. Danny was already awake, sitting at the tiny kitchen table with his laptop open, searching job listings with the grim determination of someone who knew exactly how bad their situation was. Morning, Nora said, her voice rough with exhaustion. Morning. Danny didn't look up. I found 3 places hiring, fast food, retail, 1 warehouse position. I can apply today if you want. Danny, you're in school. You can't. I can drop to part-time, take evening classes. We need the money, Nora. You can't do this alone anymore. The words hit like a physical blow. Nora sat down across from him, reached over and closed the laptop. No, she said firmly. You're not dropping out of school. You're not sacrificing your future because I lost a shitty job at a shitty diner. Then what's the plan? Danny looked up at her with eyes that looked too old for 16. Because I did the math. Without your income, we have maybe 2 weeks before everything falls apart. Rent, medication, food. It all stops working without money coming in. I know. So what's the plan? Nora looked at the business card sitting on the coffee table where she'd left it. 10:47 a.m. 13 minutes until she was supposed to call. I might have something, she said carefully. Danny followed her gaze to the card. What's that? An opportunity, maybe. I don't know yet. From who? Someone I met last night, at the diner. A customer? Danny's expression shifted into suspicion. What kind of opportunity? I don't know. He just said to call him at 11? That sounds sketchy as hell, Nora. I know how it sounds. So you're not going to call? Nora picked up the card, turned it over in her hands. The embossing caught the light. I haven't decided yet. What's there to decide? Some random customer offers you a mysterious job opportunity, tells you to call him. That's literally how every crime documentary starts. You know that, right? He's not random. The words came out before Nora could stop them. What does that mean? Nora looked at her brother, at the fear and worry etched into his young face, and made a calculation. Tell him the truth. That she'd spent last night returning money to a crime lord and was now considering taking a phone call that might pull them both into a world they didn't understand. Or lie. Protect him from the weight of this decision. Carry it alone the way she'd been carrying everything alone for years. It means he's someone with resources, she said finally. Someone who might be able to help us. And what does he want in return? I don't know yet. But you're going to find out. I don't have a lot of options here, Danny. We're 3 days from eviction. You're almost out of medication. I've got $800 in the bank and no job. So yes, I'm going to make this phone call and see what he's offering. And then I'm going to decide if it's worth it. Danny stared at her for a long moment. This is because of last night, isn't it? Whatever happened at the diner, whatever made Frank fire you, it's connected to this. Maybe. You're being really vague, and that scares me. I'm being vague because I don't have answers yet. Give me an hour. Let me make this call. Hear what he has to say. Then we'll talk for real, okay? Danny didn't look convinced, but he nodded. Okay. But Nora? If this feels wrong, if any part of it seems dangerous, I'll walk away. I promise. She checked the time. 10:58 a.m. 2 minutes. Nora stood up, grabbed her phone, and walked into her bedroom for privacy. She sat on the edge of her bed, the business card in one hand and her phone in the other, and watched the seconds tick away. 11 a.m. She dialed the number. It rang twice. Then, Nora Quinn, you're punctual. I like that. Dante's voice came through clear and controlled, nothing like the exhausted father from last night. This was the businessman, the operator, the man who ran empires. You said 11, Nora replied. I'm here. How's your brother? The question caught her off guard. How do you... Oops. I did my research. Danny Quinn, 16, chronic asthma, immunodeficiency disorder, requires regular medication that your insurance barely covers. Currently enrolled at Lincoln High, honor student despite missing significant class time due to health issues. A pause. You've been his primary guardian since your parents died 4 years ago. Car accident on the interstate. You were 19. Nora felt her breath catch. You had no right to... I had every right. You walked into my life, into a private moment with my critically injured son, and handed me $1,000 like it was nothing. You think I wouldn't find out everything about you? His voice softened slightly. I needed to know if you were a threat, if there was an angle I was missing, if someone sent you. And you're exactly what you appeared to be. A broke waitress taking care of her sick brother, making terrible financial decisions based on moral compasses that should have been beaten out of you by now. You have a real gift for compliments. Dante laughed, actually laughed. I'm not trying to compliment you. I'm trying to understand you because what you did last night, returning that money, it tells me something about who you are, and I think I might have a use for someone like that. A use? Nora's stomach tightened. That sounds ominous. It's a job offer, legitimate, legal, nothing that violates your apparently ironclad moral code. What kind of job? I own several restaurants through Moretti Holdings, high-end places, mid-range chains, a few casual dining establishments. They need managers, supervisors, people who can handle operations. You've been working food service for, papers rustling, 5 years? Started as a dishwasher, worked up to server, brief stint as a shift lead before Rosie's hired you away with a 20-cent raise. You really did your homework. I always do. The point is, you know the industry. You know operations. You're smart enough to manage people and process. And most importantly, you're honest. Painfully, stupidly honest. Still not hearing the compliments. Honesty is rare in my world, Nora. Most people lie. They steal. They find angles. But you? You drive across the city to return money you desperately need. That kind of integrity is valuable, worth investing in. Nora stood up, started pacing her small bedroom. So what, you want to hire me to manage one of your restaurants? Just like that? Because I gave you back some cash? Not just like that. There would be an interview process, background checks, which you'll pass because you're clean as fresh snow. Probationary period, standard employment protocols. A pause. But yes, essentially, I'm offering you a job with Moretti Holdings, salary position, benefits including full medical coverage for you and one dependent, $45,000 annually to start, with performance bonuses and advancement opportunities. The numbers hit Nora like a physical force. 45,000. That was more than double what she'd been making at the diner, with medical coverage, for her and Danny. That's insane, she said quietly. That's the standard rate for restaurant management in my organization. You don't even know if I can do the job. I know you showed up at midnight to do the right thing, when doing the wrong thing would have been easier and more profitable. That tells me more than any resume. Dante's voice shifted, went more serious. Look, I'm not offering this out of charity. I need people I can trust in key positions. People who won't steal from me, won't cut corners, won't play games. You proved last night that you're capable of doing the hard thing when it matters. That's exactly what I need. Nora stopped pacing. And if I say no, then you say no. You go back to job hunting, I go back to running my businesses, and we never speak again. No hard feelings, no consequences. You're free to walk away. It sounded too good, too clean, too easy. What's the catch? Nora asked. No catch. Just work. Just showing up, doing your job well, managing a restaurant like it matters. Can you do that? Could she? $45,000. Medical coverage, a real salary instead of scrambling for tips and dodging bills. Danny's medication covered, rent paid, a life that wasn't constant crisis management. But this was Dante Moretti, a man whose legitimate businesses were probably just the visible surface of something much darker underneath. Working for him meant proximity to that world, meant becoming part of an ecosystem built on violence and control. I need to think about it, Nora said. Fair enough. Take 24 hours. Call this number tomorrow, same time, with your answer. A pause. But Nora, your rent is due in 2 days. Your brother's medication runs out in 4. You don't have 24 hours to waste on pride. You have 24 hours to decide whether you're going to let your family sink or whether you're going to grab the lifeline I'm throwing you. The line went dead. Nora stood there holding her phone, her heart hammering, her mind racing through implications and consequences and the rapidly narrowing gap between survival and collapse. $45,000. Medical coverage. A real future. All she had to do was say yes to working for a man who controlled criminal enterprises with the same casual efficiency he controlled restaurant chains. She walked back to the living room where Danny was waiting, his expression anxious. Well, he asked. He offered me a job. What kind of job? Restaurant management, salary position, $45,000 a year with full medical benefits. Danny's eyes went wide. Are you serious? Completely. That's incredible. When do you start? Nora sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. I haven't said yes yet. Why not? Nora, that's literally the answer to everything. Rent, medication, all of it. That salary solves everything. I know. So what's the problem? How could she explain? How could she tell her 16-year-old brother that the man offering them salvation was the same man whose son had been beaten nearly to death as a message? That taking this job meant entering a world where violence was currency and betrayal was death? It's complicated, she said finally. It seems pretty simple to me. We're broke. He's offering you a legitimate job with real money. You should take it. What if it's not as legitimate as it sounds? Danny frowned. What do you mean? I mean, what if there's more to this than just managing a restaurant? What if accepting this job comes with expectations I don't understand yet? Like what? I don't know. That's the problem. I don't know enough about who this person is or what working for him actually means. Then find out. Do research. Google him. Look up his company. Figure out if it's real before you make a decision. Danny leaned forward. But Nora, we can't afford to turn down opportunities just because they might be complicated. We're 3 days from being homeless. I'm 4 days from running out of medication. Simple math says we take the job and deal with complications later. He wasn't wrong. The math was brutally clear, but something in Nora's gut was screaming warnings she couldn't quite articulate. She pulled out her laptop and opened a browser, typed Dante Moretti into the search bar. The results came back instantly. News articles, business filings, charity event photos, court documents. The picture they painted was complex. A man who owned legitimate businesses worth millions, who sat on charity boards and donated to children's hospitals, who also had connections to organized crime that everyone knew about, but no one could prove. There were articles about his restaurants, upscale Italian places in the financial district, casual dining chains in the suburbs, a flagship location that had won awards for its food and service. Reviews were universally good. Employee satisfaction ratings were high. Pay was above industry standard. On paper, Moretti Holdings looked like exactly what Dante had described, a successful restaurant empire run by a savvy businessman. But underneath that surface lived something else. Rumors of money laundering, whispers about port access and shipping containers, references to family business that had nothing to do with restaurants and everything to do with the darker economy that ran parallel to the legitimate one. Nora found a photo from 3 years ago. Dante at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new location. He stood next to a woman identified as his wife Sophia, elegant, poised, expensive jewelry. and next to them a teenage boy who would become the Lucas lying in a hospital bed with a fractured skull. The family looked normal, powerful, but normal. Nothing in the photo suggested the violence that lived underneath the surface. Well? Danny was reading over her shoulder. What do you think? I think it's exactly as complicated as I feared. But the job itself looks real. The restaurants exist, they're successful. People work there and get paid and go home at the end of the day. Yeah. So maybe that's all this is. Maybe he really does just need a manager and saw something in you that made him think you'd be good at it. Maybe. You don't sound convinced. Nora closed the laptop. I'm not, but I'm also not convinced I have any better options. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered warily. Nora Quinn? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes? This is Margaret Chen from Moretti Holdings Human Resources. Mr. Moretti asked me to reach out regarding your potential employment with our organization. Do you have a few minutes to discuss the position? Nora's heart rate kicked up. Yes, I have time. Excellent. First, I want to clarify that this is a preliminary conversation. Nothing is finalized until you formally accept the position and complete our onboarding process. But Mr. Moretti indicated you might have questions about the specifics of the role, and I wanted to make myself available to address those. Does that work for you? Yes? Thank you. Perfect. The position we're discussing is restaurant manager for our Midtown location, Leon's. It's one of our casual dining establishments, moderately high volume, staff of approximately 30, including kitchen and front of house. You would report directly to our regional director while maintaining day-to-day operational control. Responsibilities include staff management, inventory, scheduling, customer service oversight, and ensuring health and safety compliance. Does that align with your understanding? It sounded completely normal, completely legitimate. Yes, Nora said. That's what I understood. Good. Compensation is $45,000 annually, paid bi-weekly. Benefits include full medical, dental, and vision coverage for you and one dependent, which Mr. Moretti mentioned would cover your brother's medical needs. There's also a 401k with company matching after 1 year of employment, 2 weeks paid vacation to start, and performance bonuses quarterly based on restaurant metrics. Are there specific questions about any of these components? The medical coverage. It would cover pre-existing conditions, chronic illness management. Our insurance carrier has no exclusions for pre-existing conditions. Your brother's asthma and related care would be fully covered subject to standard copays and deductibles. Papers rustling. I'm looking at the plan details now. Prescription coverage is tier-based, but most chronic illness medications fall into Tier 2, which is a $20 copay per 30-day supply. $20 versus the $340 Nora currently paid. That would be significant, Nora managed. I'm glad to hear it. Now, if you decide to accept the position, we would need you to start as soon as possible. The current manager is transitioning out, and we're looking to minimize disruption. Could you potentially begin Monday? Today was Thursday. That gave her 4 days. Monday should work, Nora heard herself say. Wonderful. Then here's what happens next. You discuss the offer with your family, make your decision, and call Mr. Moretti tomorrow at 11 a.m. as discussed. If you accept, you'll come into our main office Monday morning for paperwork, background check processing, and orientation. You'll spend the week training with the outgoing manager and then take over full operations the following Monday. Questions so far? Just one. This is a legitimate position, right? There's nothing... Nora struggled for words. Nothing unusual about it? Margaret's voice warmed slightly. I understand your concern, and I appreciate you asking directly. Yes, this is a completely legitimate restaurant management position. You'll be working in food service, managing staff, handling normal business operations. Nothing illegal, nothing unethical, nothing that would compromise your values. Mr. Moretti runs several kinds of businesses, and he's very careful to keep them separate. Moretti Holdings is clean, by the book, fully compliant with all employment law and industry regulations. I wouldn't work here if it wasn't. The answer felt honest. Nora wanted to believe it. Okay, she said. Thank you for clarifying. Of course. And Nora? For what it's worth, I've been with this company for 8 years. I've processed hundreds of new hires. What I can tell you is that Mr. Moretti takes care of his people. If you work hard, if you're honest, if you do your job well, you'll have a career here, not just a job. I've seen people start where you're starting and move up to positions making six figures. The opportunity is real if you're willing to earn it. They finished the call with logistics and next steps. Nora hung up feeling more confused than ever. Everything about this sounded legitimate. The HR representative was professional and forthcoming. The job description was standard. The benefits were good, but not suspiciously good. And yet something in her gut kept whispering warnings about getting involved with Dante Moretti in any capacity. She spent the rest of the day researching, read employee reviews on job sites, mostly positive, some complaints about long hours, but nothing suggesting anything improper. Looked up Leon specifically, solid ratings, consistent traffic, no scandals or health violations. Called the number for Moretti Holdings and got a professional receptionist who confirmed Margaret Chen worked in HR and that they were indeed hiring for a restaurant manager position. By evening, Nora had exhausted every avenue of research she could think of. The job appeared completely legitimate, which left her with a decision that should have been simple but felt impossibly complex. Danny made dinner, pasta with jarred sauce, the cheap kind they could afford, and they ate in silence for a while before he finally spoke. "You're going to take it," he said. Not a question. "I think so." "Yeah. But you're scared." "Wouldn't you be?" "Maybe. Probably." Danny pushed pasta around his plate. "But I'm also scared of what happens if you don't take it. We've been barely surviving for so long, Nora. I'm tired. I know you're tired. This job, it's a chance to stop barely surviving and start actually living. Doesn't that matter?" "Of course it matters." "Then what's holding you back?" "The feeling that there's more to this than what I can see. That accepting help from Dante Moretti comes with strings attached, even if I can't identify what those strings are yet." "Maybe there are no strings. Maybe he really does just need a manager, and you impressed him enough to offer you the job." "You don't believe that any more than I do." Danny set down his fork. "No, I think there's definitely more going on than just a job offer. But I also think we don't have the luxury of turning down opportunities because they might be complicated. We take the job. We see what it actually involves. And if it turns into something you're not comfortable with, you walk away. But at least give it a chance." He was right. Nora knew he was right. They were out of options and out of time. She called Dante at exactly 11 a.m. the next morning. He answered on the first ring. "Your answer? I'll take the job." "Good. Margaret will be in touch with next steps. Monday morning, 9 a.m., main office. Don't be late." "I won't." A pause. "Nora, you're making the right choice, for you and for your brother. I know it doesn't feel that way right now, but trust me on this." "I'm not sure trust is something you've earned yet." Dante laughed. "Fair enough. Then earn your salary instead. Show up. Work hard. Prove you're as capable as I think you are. And if I'm not, then I'll fire you and we'll both have learned something." His voice shifted, went more serious. "But you are. I'm rarely wrong about people. And everything about you tells me you're going to be exactly what I need." That last phrase, "exactly what I need," sent a chill down Nora's spine. Because she still didn't know what he really needed, didn't know what accepting this job had actually signed her up for. But the rent was due tomorrow. Danny's medication was almost gone, and she'd just committed to walking through a door that might not let her walk back out. "Monday morning," she said. "I'll be there." "I'm counting on it." The line went dead. Nora sat there holding her phone, staring at nothing, feeling like she'd just made a deal without knowing what she'd actually bargained away. Danny appeared in the doorway. "You took it?" "I took it." "So we're okay? Rent, medication, all of it?" "Yeah, we're okay." Danny crossed the room and hugged her hard, his arms tight around her shoulders. "Thank you. I know this wasn't an easy decision, but thank you for doing it anyway." Nora hugged him back, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo, feeling the boniness of his shoulders through his shirt. 16 years old and already carrying weight he shouldn't have to carry. "It'll be fine," she said, trying to convince herself as much as him. "It's just a job, just managing a restaurant. We've done harder things." "Yeah, we have." He pulled back, smiling for the first time in days. Real relief in his eyes. He didn't see the doubt still churning in Nora's gut, didn't feel the warning bells still ringing in her head. Or maybe he did, and just chose not to acknowledge them because hope was more important right now than caution. Nora spent the weekend preparing, researched restaurant management best practices, reviewed inventory systems and scheduling software, tried to walk into Monday morning looking like someone who deserved the position she'd been offered. Sunday night, she couldn't sleep. Lay in bed running through worst-case scenarios, imagining all the ways this could go wrong. But when her alarm went off at 6 a.m. Monday morning, she got up, got dressed in the most professional clothes she owned, black pants, white button-down, jacket she'd bought for her parents' funeral and barely worn since, and headed out. The Moretti Holdings main office was downtown, a gleaming tower that made Nora's car look even more decrepit parked in the visitor lot. She rode the elevator to the 14th floor, her stomach doing flips, and walked into a reception area that screamed money and power. Margaret Chen met her personally, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a warm smile. She walked Nora through paperwork, background check authorization, tax forms, insurance elections. Everything was professional, efficient, completely normal. By noon, Nora had been officially hired, her medical coverage activated, and a start date confirmed for the following Monday after a week of training. "Welcome to Moretti Holdings," Margaret said, shaking her hand at the end. "You're going to do great here. I can feel it." Nora wanted to believe her. She left the office building with a folder full of new hire paperwork, a company ID badge, and the strange feeling that she'd just stepped through a door that would never quite close behind her again. Her phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "Congratulations on your first day. See you soon. D." Nora stared at the message for a long moment. Then she pocketed her phone and drove home, trying to ignore the feeling that she'd just made a deal with the devil and wouldn't understand the terms until it was far too late to renegotiate. The first week at Leon's passed in a blur of controlled chaos that felt almost normal. Nora arrived every morning at 7, an hour before the restaurant opened, and stayed until after close, watching the outgoing manager, a tired woman named Patricia, who looked genuinely relieved to be leaving, demonstrate the systems, the rhythms, the thousand small details that kept a restaurant running. The staff was wary at first. New management always meant uncertainty, potential upheaval, the risk that someone would come in swinging and change everything that worked. But Nora didn't swing. She watched. She learned. She asked questions instead of issuing orders. By day 3, the kitchen staff had stopped whispering when she walked past. By day 5, the servers were asking her opinion on scheduling conflicts. It felt legitimate. It felt real. Danny's medication arrived in the mail on Wednesday, 3 months' supply, paid for by insurance that actually worked the way insurance was supposed to work. He called her from school, his voice lighter than she'd heard it in months. "It's all here. Everything. The pharmacist said our copay was $20 total. $20, Nora. I almost cried in the middle of Walgreens." Nora had stood in the Leone's office, phone pressed to her ear, and felt something in her chest unclench for the first time in years. "That's great, Danny. I'm so glad. This job. It's really going to work, isn't it?" "Yeah, I think it is." She'd almost believed it. Friday afternoon, Patricia handed over the keys to the restaurant with a handshake that felt like passing a torch. "You're going to do fine here. Better than fine. The staff likes you, the numbers are solid, and you've got good instincts. Just trust them. Thank you for everything this week." "Don't thank me yet. Managing a restaurant is like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while it's on fire, but you'll figure it out." Patricia grabbed her purse, paused at the door. "And Nora, whatever you hear about Mr. Moretti, about the company, focus on the work in front of you. Keep your head down, do your job, and you'll be fine. It's the people who start asking too many questions who run into problems." The warning hung in the air like smoke after Patricia left. Nora stood alone in the empty restaurant, keys in hand, and felt the first real tendril of doubt creep back in. Keep your head down. Don't ask questions. What questions wasn't she supposed to ask? She pushed the thought aside. She had a restaurant to run starting Monday. That was enough to focus on. The weekend felt almost peaceful. She paid rent, on time, no late fee, no groveling to the landlord. She took Danny grocery shopping and bought actual food instead of the cheapest options available. They ate dinner together without the background radiation of financial panic poisoning every conversation. Sunday night, Nora laid out her clothes for the next day. Manager clothes now, professional and clean, and tried to sleep. Her mind kept drifting to Patricia's warning. to the way Margaret Chen had been so carefully specific about Moretti Holdings being separate from Dante's other business interests, to the fact that she still didn't really know what those other interests were. But the rent was paid. Danny's medication was covered. They had food in the refrigerator and money in the bank. Whatever questions she wasn't supposed to ask, they could wait. Monday morning came sharp and cold. Nora arrived at Leon's at 6:30, unlocked the doors with her own keys, and stepped into her first day as actual manager. The morning prep crew arrived at 7, kitchen staff who'd been doing this routine for years and didn't need her supervision. She checked inventory, reviewed the lunch specials, went over the schedule. Normal, productive, real. Lunch service was busy but manageable. The dinner rush hit at 6 and didn't let up until after 9. Nora was everywhere at once, handling a complaint at table 12, jumping on the register when the line backed up, helping Expo when the kitchen fell behind. She moved through the chaos with muscle memory from 5 years of food service, and by the time they closed at 10, she was exhausted in the way that felt earned. The staff helped clean up, chattering about their nights, their lives. Normal workplace conversation. Nora did the final cash out, locked the deposits in the safe, and was doing a last walkthrough when her phone rang. Dante. She stared at the screen for 2 rings before answering. Mr. Moretti, how was your first day? The question sounded genuine, almost paternal. Nora leaned against the bar, suddenly aware of how tired she was. Busy? Good. We did strong numbers for a Monday. I saw. I get daily reports from all locations. Leone's hasn't had a Monday that strong in 6 months. Patricia was letting things slide toward the end. The staff is good. They just needed someone paying attention. That's exactly why I hired you. A pause. I'm glad it's working out. I told you you'd be good at this. It's been 1 day, and you're already making an impact. That's not nothing, Nora. Background noise on his end. Voices, movement. I need you to do something for me tomorrow. Nothing complicated, just a small favor. There it was. The first ask, the first string attached to the job she'd convinced herself was clean. What kind of favor? Nora kept her voice neutral. I need you to accept a delivery. Someone will come by around 2 p.m., ask for you specifically, and give you a package. You take it, put it in my office. There's a locked cabinet in the back. Combination is your birthday backwards. And that's it. Don't open it. Don't ask about it. Just store it until I can pick it up later in the week. Nora's stomach tightened. What's in the package? Does it matter? Yes. Dante sighed, a sound that contained both amusement and mild frustration. It's documents, paperwork for another business transaction that I don't want going through normal channels. Nothing illegal, just private. Can you handle that? If it's not illegal, why the secrecy? Because I value discretion in all my business dealings, and I'm asking you as a favor. Are you going to help me, or are we going to have a problem on your second day? The shift in his tone was subtle but unmistakable. The friendly boss disappearing, the dangerous operator emerging. Nora made a calculation. 1 favor, documents in a locked cabinet. Nothing she had to actually do except accept a delivery. Fine, she said. 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'll handle it. Thank you. I appreciate it. The warmth returned to his voice like flipping a switch. And Nora? You did great today. Get some rest. You've earned it. He hung up before she could respond. Nora stood in the empty restaurant, phone in hand, feeling like she'd just taken the first real step down a path she couldn't fully see yet. Documents, private paperwork. Nothing illegal. She wanted to believe that. She locked up and drove home through late-night traffic, her mind churning through implications. 1 favor. That's all this was. And maybe it really was just documents, just private business that had nothing to do with the darker side of Dante's empire. Danny was asleep when she got home. She checked on him, a habit from when he was younger and sicker, making sure he was breathing, making sure the inhaler was on his nightstand, and then collapsed into her own bed. Sleep came easier than expected. The exhaustion of a full day's work pulled her under fast and kept her there until her alarm dragged her back to consciousness at 5:30 a.m. Tuesday started the same as Monday. Morning prep, inventory, lunch rush. The rhythm of restaurant work that required her full attention and left no room for anxiety about the delivery scheduled for 2 p.m. Except she kept checking the time. 1:15, 1:30, 1:45. At exactly 2 p.m., a man walked through the front door. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of blank professional expression that said security or lawyer or something in between. He walked directly to the hostess stand where Nora was reviewing reservations. "Nora Quinn?" "That's me." He handed her a manila envelope, thick and sealed with tape. "For Mr. Moretti. He said you'd know what to do with it." Nora took the envelope. It had weight, substance, documents, like Dante had said. "Probably." "Thank you," she said. The man nodded and left without another word. The whole interaction took less than 30 seconds. Nora stood there holding the envelope, acutely aware of the servers watching, the kitchen staff who could see her through the window, the customers eating lunch 10 feet away. She tucked the envelope under her arm and walked to the office and back, closed the door, and stared at it. Documents, private paperwork, nothing illegal. The envelope was sealed thoroughly, layers of tape ensuring it couldn't be opened accidentally, or casually, or without leaving obvious evidence of tampering. Nora found the locked cabinet Dante had mentioned, a heavy metal unit in the corner of the office that looked more like a safe than storage. She spun the combination lock, entering her birthday backwards like he'd instructed. The lock clicked open. Inside was empty except for a shelf and a small LED light that activated when the door opened. She placed the envelope on the shelf, closed the cabinet, spun the lock to secure it. Done. Simple. Clean. Exactly what he'd asked. She went back to work and pushed the nagging doubt to the back of her mind. The week continued. Wednesday brought another delivery. Same man, same blank professional expression, another sealed envelope that went into the locked cabinet. Thursday was quiet. Friday brought 2 deliveries, both envelopes, both secured without comment or explanation. By the end of the week, there were 5 envelopes in the locked cabinet, and Nora had stopped asking herself what was in them. The restaurant was thriving. Numbers were up across the board. The staff had fully accepted her as their manager. She got a personal email from Margaret Chen congratulating her on strong first-week performance. Everything was working exactly as promised, except for the envelopes. And the way Dante called every few days with small requests: accept this delivery, let this person into the office after hours, don't ask questions about the man who comes in and uses the back storage room on Wednesday evenings. Small things. Individually meaningless, but accumulating like sediment, building into something Nora couldn't quite define but could definitely feel. Saturday night, after close, she sat in the office staring at the locked cabinet and thought about opening it. Thought about looking inside those envelopes and confirming they were just documents, just paperwork, nothing that would implicate her in anything illegal. But she didn't, because part of her didn't want to know, didn't want confirmation that she'd been played, that the legitimate job was just cover for something else, that she'd walked into exactly the trap she'd feared. She locked up and went home. Sunday was her day off. She spent it with Danny, watching movies and pretending everything was fine. Monday started week 3. The routine had become familiar now. Morning prep, inventory checks, lunch service, deliveries at 2 p.m. 3 times a week, dinner rush, close. She was good at the job. Great at it, actually. The staff respected her. The customers were happy. The numbers kept climbing, and the envelopes kept accumulating in the locked cabinet. Wednesday of week 3, Dante showed up in person. Nora was doing mid-afternoon prep when he walked through the front door, same controlled precision as the first time she'd seen him at the diner, but different now. Healthier. Less haunted. His son had recovered. She knew because she'd asked, one of their phone conversations where he'd actually sounded human instead of operational. "Mr. Moretti." Nora met him at the door. "I wasn't expecting you. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd see how things are running." He glanced around the restaurant, taking in the details with that same predator assessment. "Place looks good. Better than it has in a while." "Thank you. Can we talk in your office?" It wasn't really a question. Nora led him back, hyper-aware of the staff watching, the way the kitchen went quiet when they realized who had just walked in. She closed the office door behind them. Dante went directly to the locked cabinet. "You've been accepting the deliveries." Statement, not question. "Yes, like you asked." He spun the combination, opened the cabinet, and pulled out the stack of envelopes, 8 of them now. He sorted through them quickly, checking something on each one, dates maybe or markings Nora hadn't noticed. "Good. Everything's here. He stacked them neatly, tucked them inside his jacket. I appreciate your discretion. Can I ask what they are? Dante looked at her for a long moment. No. I'm accepting deliveries, storing them, not asking questions. But I'm also responsible for everything that happens in this restaurant. If there's something illegal going on, there isn't. His voice went hard. I told you this job was legitimate. I meant it. The deliveries have nothing to do with the restaurant operations. They're my personal business, and I'm using your office as a temporary drop point because it's convenient and secure. That's all you need to know. That's not how this works. I can't just... You can, and you will. Dante stepped closer, not threatening exactly, but imposing. You want to know what's in the envelopes? Fine. They're financial records, transaction histories, documents related to business dealings that need to stay private for legal reasons that have nothing to do with you or this restaurant. Happy now? Financial records for what kind of business? The kind that pays your salary and covers your brother's medical bills and keeps you from being homeless. His eyes were cold now, all the warmth from previous conversations completely gone. You have a choice, Nora. You can keep doing your job, accepting the occasional delivery, and enjoying the benefits of working for me. Or you can start asking questions I'm not going to answer, and we can revisit our employment arrangement. The threat was clear. Keep quiet or lose everything. Nora felt her jaw tighten, anger and fear mixing into something dangerous in her chest. You told me this was legitimate. I promised you a legitimate restaurant management position, which is exactly what you have. You manage Leon's. You do it well. Everything else is separate. Not your concern. Not your problem. Dante's expression softened slightly. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I'm asking you to mind your business and let me handle mine. Can you do that? Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to quit right now, to walk away from whatever this was before it got worse. But Danny's medication, the rent already paid through next month, the security of a real salary. Yes, she said quietly. I can do that. Good. Dante headed for the door, then paused. You're doing excellent work here, Nora. Don't let paranoia ruin a good thing. En armos, he left, the envelopes tucked safely inside his jacket, leaving Nora standing in her office feeling like she'd just failed some test she hadn't known she was taking. The rest of the week felt different, tainted. Nora went through the motions, managing staff, serving customers, accepting deliveries, but the shine was off everything now. She knew she was complicit in something, even if she couldn't define exactly what. Friday night, after close, she was doing final inventory when she noticed something off in the storage room. Boxes stacked differently than she'd left them. A section of the floor that looked recently cleaned when the rest was dusty. She moved the boxes. Behind them was a trapdoor in the floor. Not hidden exactly, but not obvious either. A handle flush with the wood, a locking mechanism that looked new. Nora stared at it for a long moment. Then she crouched down and tried the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. She stood up, replaced the boxes exactly as they'd been, and left the storage room with her heart hammering. A trap door. In the floor. In the restaurant she managed. What the hell was under there? She should call someone. Police. Someone. Report this. But report what? That her employer had installed a locked trap door in a building he owned? That she'd accepted some sealed envelopes? That she suspected something illegal but had no proof and no idea what specifically she was suspecting? Nora locked up the restaurant and sat in her car for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to think through her options. She could quit, walk away, find another job somehow. But that meant losing the salary, the insurance, Danny's medication coverage. It meant going back to the desperate scramble of barely surviving. She could confront Dante, demand answers, but she'd already tried that and been shut down hard. She could keep her head down like Patricia had advised. Do her job, accept the deliveries. Pretend she hadn't seen the trap door. That option felt like drowning in slow motion. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Nora Quinn? A woman's voice, urgent and scared. My name is Sophia Reyes. I work at Dante Moretti's flagship restaurant downtown. I need to talk to you, in person. Tonight, if possible. It's important. Nora's pulse spiked. Who is this? How did you get my number? I got it from Margaret Chen's desk. I'm an assistant manager. I've been with the company for 3 years, and I think you're in danger. We both are. Please, can you meet me? There's a coffee shop on 5th and Madison. 24 hours. I'll be there in 30 minutes. I don't understand. Danger from what? Not over the phone, please. 30 minutes. I have information you need to see. The line went dead. Nora sat there staring at her phone, every alarm bell in her head screaming. This could be a trap, a test from Dante, a setup, or it could be someone trying to warn her about something real. She started her car and drove to 5th and Madison. The coffee shop was nearly empty at 11 p.m., just a tired barista and a few students studying for exams. Sophia Reyes sat in a corner booth, a woman maybe 30 years old with dark hair pulled back and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in days. Nora slid into the booth across from her. You have 2 minutes to convince me this isn't some kind of setup. Sophia pulled out her phone, opened a folder, and slid it across the table. Look at these. Then decide if you want to hear more. Nora picked up the phone. The screen showed photographs, security camera footage, financial documents, shipping manifests. She scrolled through them slowly, her stomach sinking with each image. The documents showed transactions, large amounts of money moving through restaurant accounts, shipping containers arriving at ports, inventory that didn't match what was on the official books, and dates, specific dates that matched the days Nora had received deliveries. What am I looking at? Nora's voice came out strained. Money laundering. Through the restaurants. Moretti Holdings is legitimate on the surface, but underneath it's a pipeline for moving cash from his illegal operations. The deliveries you've been accepting? Those aren't documents. Those are encrypted flash drives with transaction records. The locked cabinet in your office? It's not a cabinet. It's a terminal for processing the data. Nora felt the room tilt slightly. That's not... The envelopes are sealed. I saw them. The envelopes are camouflage. The actual data transfers happen through the cabinet itself when the envelopes are placed inside. It's networked to his central system. You've been serving as an unwitting courier node. That's insane. If what you're saying is true, why would he tell me the combination? Why make me part of it? Because you're perfect cover. A broke waitress who took a job out of desperation. No criminal record, no connections, completely clean. If anyone investigates, you look like an innocent manager who had no idea what was happening in her own restaurant. Sophia leaned forward. You're being set up, Nora. When this operation gets busted, and it will get busted, the FBI is already circling, you're going to be the one holding the bag. Nora pushed the phone back across the table. Why should I believe you? How do I know you're not the one setting me up? Because I'm in the exact same position you are. I've been accepting deliveries for 2 years. I didn't know what they really were until 3 weeks ago when I accidentally saw someone accessing the terminal. I started digging, found these files, realized what we've all been doing. Sophia's voice cracked slightly. I've got 2 kids. I can't go to prison. I can't let my children grow up with their mother in jail for crimes I didn't even know I was committing. If this is all true, why haven't you gone to the police? Because Dante Moretti has half the police department on his payroll. If I walk into a station, I'm dead within 24 hours. The only way out is to gather enough evidence to go directly to the FBI with protection already in place. But I can't do that alone. I need someone else who can corroborate, who has access to another location. I need you. Nora stood up. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too exposed. I can't do this. I can't... Your brother Danny is 16, right? Chronic illness? You took this job to cover his medical bills? Sophia's voice was quiet but relentless. What happens to him when you go to prison? When your salary stops and his medication coverage disappears? You think Dante cares about any of that? You're disposable to him. We all are. The words hit like physical blows. Nora sat back down heavily. What are you asking me to do? Help me gather evidence. Get access to the terminal in your office, download the transaction records. I'll do the same at my location. Between the 2 of us, we'll have enough to approach the FBI with a deal. Immunity in exchange for testimony. It's the only way we survive this. Nora's mind raced through implications, consequences, the exponentially expanding disaster her life had become. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a waitress. Now she was apparently part of a money laundering operation and being asked to become an FBI informant. I need time to think, she managed. We don't have time. The FBI investigation is accelerating. I've got a contact who told me they're planning raids within the month. If we're still just cogs in the machine when that happens, we go down with everyone else. How do you know all this? Who's your contact? Sophia hesitated. Someone who has as much to lose as we do. Someone inside the investigation who wants to make sure the right people go to jail and the innocent ones don't. That's all I can tell you right now. Everything about this felt wrong. The late-night meeting, the allegations, the convenient FBI contact. It was too neat, too perfectly designed to terrify her into cooperation. But the photographs on Sophia's phone had looked real. The dates had matched, and the trapdoor in Leon's storage room was definitely real. I need 48 hours, Nora said finally, to verify what you're telling me, to figure out if I'm walking into something worse by trusting you. You don't have 48 hours. Then I guess we're both screwed, because I'm not making this decision in a coffee shop at midnight based on some pictures and paranoia. Nora stood up again. If what you're saying is true, I'll help. But I need to confirm it first. How? I'll figure it out. Give me your number. I'll call you in 2 days. Sophia wrote her number on a napkin, slid it across the table. 2 days. But Nora? Be careful. Dante has eyes everywhere. If he even suspects you're digging into this, you won't just lose your job. You'll disappear. Nora pocketed the napkin and left without responding. She drove home on autopilot, her mind spinning through everything Sophia had said. Money laundering, FBI investigation, being set up as the fall guy. It all sounded insane, but it also sounded plausible. She pulled into her apartment complex and sat in the car, trying to think clearly through the panic. She needed to verify Sophia's claims, needed proof that what she'd been told was real before committing to anything. The trapdoor. If she could get into whatever was under that trapdoor, she'd know for certain what was happening in her restaurant. Monday. She'd do it Monday night after everyone left. One look. That's all she needed. She went inside and found Danny waiting up, his expression worried. Where were you? You said you'd be home by 11:30. I got held up at work. Everything's fine. You look like everything's not fine. Nora forced a smile. Just tired. Long week. How are you feeling? Good. Great, actually. The new medication is working better than the old stuff. I can breathe easier. It's weird not wheezing all the time. He studied her face. Are you sure you're okay? Yeah, I'm sure. Go to bed. It's late. Danny hesitated, then hugged her quickly. Love you. Love you too. She waited until his bedroom door closed, then sat on the couch and put her head in her hands. 2 days until she had to call Sophia back. 2 days to confirm whether her entire life had become a crime she didn't know she was committing. The weekend crawled past. Nora went to work Saturday feeling like every customer could see her guilt, like every delivery was confirmation of the trap closing around her. She smiled and managed and pretended everything was normal while her insides twisted into knots. Sunday she spent researching. Looked up FBI investigations into money laundering, read about how restaurant businesses were used as fronts, found case after case where low-level managers were prosecuted while the real criminals walked free. By Monday morning, she'd convinced herself Sophia was telling the truth. The only question left was what to do about it. She went to work with a plan. Monday nights were slower. Most of the staff left by 10:30. She'd volunteer to close alone, then access the trap door once the restaurant was empty. Simple. Clean. Just gather information and make a decision. The day dragged. Nora went through the motions, her mind on tonight, on what she might find, on the choices that would follow. The evening rush came and went. By 10:15, the last customer had paid and left. The staff cleaned up quickly. They had a system now, efficient and practiced. By 10:40, Nora was alone. She locked the front door, turned off the main lights, and went to the storage room. The boxes moved easier this time. She knew exactly where they'd been. The trapdoor sat there, a rectangle of possibility and dread, still locked. Nora tried the combination from the cabinet. Nothing. She tried her birthday forwards and backwards. Nothing. She pulled out her phone, thought about calling Sophia and admitting defeat. Then she tried Danny's birthday. The lock clicked open. Nora stared at the trapdoor, her heart hammering. Why would Danny's birthday open a lock in a restaurant she'd only been managing for 3 weeks? Unless Dante had planned this from the beginning. Unless everything, the job offer, the salary, the benefits, all of it, had been engineered specifically to position her here, in this restaurant, with access to whatever was down there. She pulled open the trap door. A ladder led down into darkness. She turned on her phone flashlight and climbed down carefully, each rung feeling like a step further into disaster. The space below was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet, and it was full of equipment, servers, computer terminals, hard drives stacked on shelves, networking equipment with blinking lights, and taped to one of the servers, a piece of paper with handwritten instructions. Nora pulled it down and read, "Network terminal. Receives encrypted data packets from courier deliveries. Processes and routes to central server. Cabinet upstairs is input interface. Do not disconnect, do not modify. Report any technical issues to tech support only." And at the bottom, in different handwriting, "Quinn, this stays between us. No exceptions. DM." The note was dated 2 days before her interview, 2 days before she'd even accepted the job. Nora felt something break inside her chest. This had been planned. All of it. The chance meeting at the diner, the returned money, the job offer. None of it had been coincidence or karma or opportunity. It had been recruitment. She'd been selected, tested, and installed in this position because Dante needed someone clean, desperate, and controllable. Someone who would accept deliveries without question. Someone who would look innocent when everything collapsed. Her phone rang. Dante. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Hello? Where are you right now, Nora?" His voice was cold, dangerous. "At the restaurant, closing up. Why?" "Don't lie to me. I have remote access to the terminal. I can see someone opened the trapdoor 4 minutes ago. I can see someone is currently standing in the server room." A pause. "I'm very disappointed. I thought we had an understanding about staying out of my business." Nora's mouth went dry. "I needed to know what I was involved in. You weren't involved in anything except managing a restaurant. But now that you've gone looking for problems, you've created some." Background noise. A car door closing. "Stay where you are. I'm 10 minutes away. We're going to have a conversation about boundaries and consequences." The line went dead. 10 minutes. Nora looked around the server room, her mind racing. She could run, could leave right now, grab Danny, disappear into the night. But Dante knew where she lived, knew Danny's school, knew every detail of her life. She could call the police, but Sophia had said half the department was on Dante's payroll. She could call Sophia, but Sophia was probably compromised too. Everything about that meeting felt like manipulation now. 8 minutes. Nora climbed the ladder back up, her hands shaking. She closed the trapdoor, replaced the boxes, and stood in the storage room trying to think through options that kept narrowing to a single point. She was trapped, completely and thoroughly trapped. 6 minutes. She walked to her office and sat behind the desk, pulled out her phone and recorded a video message. "Danny, if you're watching this, something bad has happened to me. I need you to take this phone to the FBI field office downtown. Ask for an agent working money laundering cases. Show them this video. Tell them about Dante Moretti, about Leone's restaurant, about the server room under the storage room. Tell them I was coerced. Tell them I didn't know." Her voice cracked. "Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them I tried to do the right thing. I love you. I'm so sorry." She saved the video, texted it to Danny's phone with a message. "Don't open unless you don't hear from me by tomorrow morning." 4 minutes. The front door of the restaurant rattled, a key in the lock. The door opened. Footsteps. Dante appeared in the office doorway. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, the same security from the hospital, their expressions blank and professional. "Nora." Dante's voice was controlled, but she could hear the anger underneath. "We need to talk about trust, about boundaries, about what happens when people violate agreements. I never agreed to be part of a criminal operation." Nora stood up, trying to keep her voice steady. "You lied to me. You manipulated me. You used my desperation. I gave you a job when you had nothing. I paid your rent. I covered your brother's medication. I pulled you out of poverty and gave you a future." He stepped into the office. "And in return, I asked for very little. Accept some deliveries. Don't ask questions. Simple requests. But you couldn't do that. You set me up. From the beginning. The diner, the money, all of it. You engineered everything to put me in this position." Dante smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I recognized potential when I saw it. You were honest, desperate, and had a sick brother. Perfect motivations for loyalty and silence. Yes, I arranged the situation. Yes, I tested you. And you passed every test until tonight. What happens now? That depends on you. Dante sat on the edge of her desk, casual despite the tension. You have two options. Option one, you forget what you saw tonight. You go back to managing this restaurant. You accept deliveries, you keep your mouth shut, and you continue enjoying the benefits of working for me. And option two? Option two is much less pleasant. You refuse to cooperate. You become a liability, and liabilities have a way of disappearing in this city. He leaned forward. But I don't think you'll choose option two, because option two doesn't just affect you. It affects Danny, his medication, his safety, his future. The threat was crystal clear. Cooperate or watch her brother suffer. Nora felt rage and terror mixing into something combustible in her chest. You'd threaten a 16-year-old kid? I'd threaten anyone who poses a risk to my operation. Age is irrelevant. Dante's expression hardened. You made this personal the moment you opened that trap door. Now you choose how it ends. Cooperation or consequences. What's it going to be? Nora looked at him. This man who'd seemed almost human at the hospital, almost generous with his job offer, almost reasonable in his requests. The mask was completely off now. This was the real Dante Moretti, the criminal, the predator. And she had no cards to play, no leverage, no options except capitulation or destruction. I'll cooperate, she said quietly. The words tasted like ash. Good. I'm glad you're being sensible. Dante stood. But there's a problem. You've seen too much now. You know about the servers, the operation, the scope of what we're doing. That knowledge makes you more than just a manager. It makes you complicit. You said if I cooperated, I said you'd continue working for me. I didn't say in what capacity. Dante pulled out his phone, typed something. You're being promoted. Effective immediately, you're regional operations manager. You'll oversee not just Lyon's, but 4 other locations. You'll coordinate deliveries across all 5 restaurants. You'll have direct access to the terminal network. Nora felt the walls closing in. I don't want a promotion. You don't get a choice. You're in this now, Nora. All the way in, and the only way forward is deeper. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, smiled. Perfect timing. There's someone I want you to meet. Someone who can explain your new responsibilities in detail. The office door opened again. Sophia Reyes walked in. She looked at Nora with an expression of complete professional neutrality. No recognition, no conspiracy, no fear. Mr. Moretti, Sophia said, you wanted to see me? Yes. I want you to bring Nora up to speed on regional operations. She's going to be working directly with you now. Full access to the network, all locations, the complete scope of our operations. He looked at Nora. Sophia has been with us for 3 years. She's one of my most trusted regional managers. She'll teach you everything you need to know. Nora stared at Sophia, understanding clicking into place like a lock engaging. The late-night meeting, the photos, the FBI investigation. All of it had been theater, a test to see if Nora would stay loyal or reach out for help when threatened. She'd failed the test, and now she was being pushed so deep into the operation that extraction would be impossible without bringing herself down too. Sophia smiled at her, professional and cold. Welcome to the team, Nora. We have a lot to go over. Dante headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Nora, the video you sent to Danny? I've already had it deleted remotely from his phone. You're not the only one with IT resources. From now on, assume I can see everything you do, hear everything you say, access everything you think is private. There's no way out. There's only forward. He looked back at her with something that might have been sympathy if it hadn't been so calculating. I told you on day 1 that you make terrible financial decisions based on doing the right thing. Now you get to see what happens when there is no right thing left to do. He left with his security, leaving Nora alone with Sophia in an office that suddenly felt like a cell. Sophia's expression shifted once they were alone, the professional mask slipping slightly. I really am sorry, for what it's worth, but you needed to understand there's no escape. The sooner you accept that, the easier this gets. You lied to me. That whole meeting was a test. Yes. To see if you'd stay loyal or try to run. You tried to verify independently, which shows intelligence, but you also came very close to making a fatal mistake. Sophia sat down in the chair across from the desk. Dante values loyalty above everything. If you'd actually gone to the FBI, you wouldn't have made it home that night. Now you're in deep enough that running becomes suicide for you and your brother. Nora sank into her chair, the full weight of her situation crushing down. How do you live with this? Working for him, knowing what he does? Same way you will. One day at a time. Making choices between bad options and worse ones. Taking care of the people who matter and trying not to think too hard about everything else. Sophia pulled out a tablet, started pulling up files. Your new salary is $90,000 annually. Danny's medical coverage includes experimental treatments if he ever needs them. You'll have access to company housing if you want it. Nice places, safe neighborhoods. The benefits of compliance are real. Blood money. Maybe. But it spends the same as clean money, and your brother's medications don't care where the funds came from. Sophia looked at her with eyes that held genuine exhaustion. You can hate this. You can hate yourself for being part of it, but you're going to do it anyway, because the alternative is watching Danny lose everything. That's not really a choice. That's just surrender with extra steps. Nora looked at the tablet Sophia was holding, at the files and spreadsheets and operational details of a criminal enterprise now spread out for her to manage. She thought about the video she'd recorded, already deleted. The evidence she'd planned to gather, already compromised. The FBI help that had never existed. She thought about Danny at home, sleeping peacefully, his medication sitting on his nightstand, paid for by money that came from sources she could no longer pretend not to understand. And she thought about the moment 3 weeks ago when she'd driven across the city to return $1,000 to a stranger, believing somehow that doing the right thing mattered. That woman was gone now, dead, replaced by whoever she was about to become. Show me what I need to know, Nora said quietly. Teach me how this works. Sophia nodded and started walking her through the operational structure of money laundering through 5 restaurants, explaining the delivery schedules and the encryption protocols and the terminal network that now connected Nora to crimes she could never escape. And with every minute that passed, with every piece of information absorbed, Nora felt herself slipping further from the person she'd been and closer to the person Dante Moretti needed her to be. Someone who accepted deliveries without question. Someone who managed operations without conscience. Someone who'd traded her integrity for her brother's survival and learned to live with that trade. The transformation was complete by dawn, when Sophia finally left and Nora sat alone in her office watching the sunrise over a city that looked exactly the same as yesterday, but felt like an entirely different world. She picked up her phone and called Danny. Hey, he answered, voice thick with sleep. Why are you calling so early? I got promoted, big raise, better benefits. I wanted you to be the first to know. That's amazing. Nora, that's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. They talked for a few more minutes about details and logistics before hanging up. Nora sat there listening to the restaurant come to life around her. Staff arriving for morning prep, deliveries at the back door, the normal rhythm of a business opening for another day. Except nothing was normal anymore. Nothing would ever be normal again. And the worst part was knowing she'd choose the same path 100 times over if it meant keeping Danny safe. That was the real trap, not the job, not the money, not the threats. The trap was love, and it had closed around her the moment she'd decided her brother's life mattered more than her own. 3 months in, and Nora Quinn no longer recognized herself in mirrors. The woman staring back wore expensive clothes now, tailored suits that Sophia had insisted she buy, professional attire for someone overseeing 5 restaurants and moving millions of dollars through encrypted networks. Her hair was different, styled instead of pulled back in a functional ponytail. Even her posture had changed, shoulders back, chin up, the exhausted slump of survival replaced by the rigid composure of someone who couldn't afford to show weakness. She looked successful, powerful even. She looked like a criminal. The regional manager position came with an office in the Moretti Holdings downtown headquarters, 14th floor with a view of the harbor where shipping containers arrived daily with cargo that had nothing to do with restaurant supplies. Nora spent her days coordinating delivery schedules, monitoring terminal activity across 5 locations, ensuring the encrypted data packets moved smoothly through the network that laundered money with ruthless efficiency. She was good at it, terrifyingly good. The same organizational skills that had made her a competent waitress made her an exceptional operations manager for a criminal enterprise. Within 6 weeks, she'd identified inefficiencies in the delivery routes and streamlined the schedule. Within 8 weeks, she'd restructured the terminal network to process transactions 15% faster. Dante had personally called to congratulate her on the improvements. The praise had made her want to vomit. Danny was thriving. His medication regimen had stabilized his symptoms better than anything in the past 3 years. He'd gained weight, lost the perpetual gray tinge to his skin, started talking about college like it was actually possible instead of a fantasy. He looked healthy, happy. He had no idea his recovery was funded by organized crime. Nora kept that knowledge locked in a compartment deep in her chest, right next to the guilt and the self-loathing and the growing certainty that she'd sold her soul for medical insurance and could never buy it back. Thursday afternoon, week 14, her office phone rang. Internal line, Dante's personal extension. Mr. Moretti. Her voice came out professional, neutral. She'd learned to control that in the first month. My office. Now, we need to discuss something sensitive. He hung up before she could respond. Nora saved her work, closed her laptop, and took the elevator up 2 floors to the executive level. Dante's office took up a corner of the 16th floor, all glass and steel and minimalist power. His assistant waved her through without comment. She was a regular visitor now, part of the inner circle, trusted. The thought made her stomach turn. Dante stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, his back to the door. He didn't turn when she entered. Close the door. Lock it. Nora did. The click of the lock sounded impossibly loud. We have a problem. Dante's voice was tight, controlled anger barely leashed. Someone inside the organization has been skimming. Moving money off the books, redirecting shipments, stealing from me. Small amounts at first, but it's escalating. Last month alone, $500,000 disappeared. Nora's pulse kicked up. Do you know who? Not yet, but the transactions are being routed through one of your 5 locations. The irregularities started 6 weeks ago, right after you implemented the new scheduling system. He turned to face her, and his expression was carved from ice, which means either you're involved or someone is using your access to cover their tracks. The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Nora felt her breath catch. I'm not stealing from you. I know. If I thought you were, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You'd already be dead. He said it matter-of-factly, like commenting on the weather. But someone is using your credentials, your access codes, your terminal permissions. I need you to find out who and how. I don't know how to do that. I manage deliveries and coordinate schedules. I'm not an investigator. Then learn. Because if I don't have answers within 2 weeks, I start making examples. And the first example will be everyone with access to those terminals, which includes you. Dante crossed to his desk, pulled out a file folder, tossed it to her. Those are the flagged transactions. Study them, find the pattern, figure out who's responsible. And Nora? Don't even think about running. I have Danny's school on speed dial. 1 word from me and he disappears before you make it to your car. The file felt heavy in her hands. She opened it, saw pages of financial records, transaction logs, routing numbers that meant nothing to her untrained eye. I need help. Someone who understands this better than I do. Use Sophia. She's been through this before. But don't tell anyone else. Whoever is doing this has inside information. They know our systems, our protocols, our security measures. Trust no one except me and Sophia. Everyone else is potentially compromised. Nora nodded numbly, clutching the file. 2 weeks. 13 days now. Clock started yesterday. Dante's expression softened microscopically. I don't want to hurt you, Nora. You've been an asset, but this organization survives on loyalty and consequences. Someone is betraying me, and when I find out who, they'll learn what happens to thieves. Make sure it's not you they're setting up. She left his office with the file burning against her chest, her mind racing through implications. Someone was stealing. Someone with her access, which meant someone close to her, someone she worked with daily. The elevator ride down felt like descending into deeper water, pressure increasing with each floor. Sophia was in her own office when Nora arrived, reviewing spreadsheets with the focused attention of someone who'd learned not to make mistakes. She looked up when Nora entered, registered the file, and her expression went carefully blank. He told you. You knew about this? Nora closed the door, kept her voice low. Someone's been stealing and you didn't warn me? I found out yesterday. Same time Dante did. The system flagged the irregularities automatically. Sophia gestured to her computer screen. I've been going through the logs trying to trace the source. It's sophisticated. Whoever is doing this knows exactly how to manipulate the routing protocols without triggering immediate alarms. Nora dropped into the chair across from Sophia's desk, opened the file, started scanning the records. Numbers and codes that should have made sense but instead swam together in a confusing mass. Walk me through this. What am I looking at? Sophia came around the desk, leaned over Nora's shoulder, started pointing to specific entries. These are the legitimate transactions. Money coming in from the port operations, getting processed through the restaurant terminals, moving to the central accounts. Standard operation, but these, she tapped several flagged entries. These are the problems. Same routing structure, same encryption, but the destination accounts are different. The money is being diverted before it reaches central processing. How is that possible? I thought the system was automated. It is. But someone with administrative access can create exceptions, temporary routing rules that bypass the normal flow. It requires high-level credentials, regional manager access or above. Sophia straightened up, her expression grim. Which means it's either you, me, or the 3 other regional managers, or someone who stole our credentials. Could someone have hacked the system? Possible, but unlikely. Our security is military grade. It would take serious expertise and resources to penetrate it from the outside. Much more likely it's someone inside with legitimate access who's exploiting their position. Nora studied the flagged transactions, looking for patterns, dates, amounts, routing codes. Most of the diversions happened on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The amounts varied, but averaged around 30,000 per transaction. And the routing codes, these all route through Lyons, Nora said slowly. My original location. Every single flagged transaction uses the terminal there. I know, that's why Dante thinks either you're involved or someone is framing you. Sophia pulled up another screen on her computer. But here's what's interesting. The access logs show you weren't physically at Lyons for most of these transactions. You were here, in this building, during the times the diversions occurred. So someone is using my credentials remotely? That's the theory. But to do that, they'd need your login information and your biometric authentication. The terminals require both. Credentials alone aren't enough. Nora felt something cold slide down her spine. The biometric authentication? What kind? Fingerprint scan. Every time you access a terminal, you have to provide both password and fingerprint. It's supposed to make the system impossible to spoof, unless someone copied my fingerprints. Sophia went still. How would they do that? Nora's mind raced back through the past 3 months, the welcome dinner Dante had hosted for the regional managers in week 2, the wine glasses they'd used, the forms she'd filled out, the tablet Sophia had handed her that first night in Leon's office, showing her the operational structure, fingerprints left on surfaces, easy to lift if you knew what you were doing. This was planned from the beginning, Nora said quietly. Whoever is doing this, they've been setting me up since day 1. They recruited me specifically because I'd be the perfect fall guy. Clean record, desperate circumstances, no connections to organized crime. When this blows up, I'm the one who takes the blame while they disappear with the money. That's a lot of assumptions. It's the only thing that makes sense. Why else would Dante personally recruit a broke waitress for a position this sensitive? Why give me rapid advancement and high-level access? Because someone convinced him I was perfect for the role. Someone who needed a patsy. Sophia's expression shifted through several emotions: skepticism, calculation, dawning understanding. If you're right, then someone very close to Dante is playing him. Someone he trusts enough to take their recommendation seriously. Who recruited me? Who suggested my name to Dante? I don't know. Hiring decisions at that level, Dante handles them personally. He doesn't explain his reasoning. Sophia sat back down at her computer, started pulling up files. But I can check the metadata on your hiring paperwork, see who initiated the process, who pushed it through HR, who signed off on the various stages. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up internal documents, tracking the digital paper trail of Nora's employment. Minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by the clicking of keys and the soft hum of the computer. Here, Sophia's voice went tight. Your initial personnel file was created by someone with executive access, but not Dante. Look at the digital signature. Nora leaned over to see the screen. The signature read, M. Chen, Margaret Chen, the HR director who'd been so professional, so reassuring, so careful to explain that everything was legitimate. Margaret recruited me? According to this, yes. She created your file, processed your application, fast-tracked your background check, and personally delivered your offer letter to Dante for final approval. Sophia clicked through more files. And look at this. She's accessed your personnel file 47 times in the past 3 months. Way more than normal for HR oversight. Why would she set me up? What does she get out of framing me? $500,000 so far, if she's the one stealing. And a convenient scapegoat when it all comes crashing down. Sophia pulled up more screens, cross-referencing data. Margaret has executive-level access to all systems. She processes payroll, manages benefits, handles personnel records. She could easily have copied your credentials during onboarding, lifted your fingerprints from the forms you filled out, created a duplicate authentication profile. The pieces were clicking into place with terrible clarity. The helpful HR director who'd answered all Nora's questions. The woman who'd assured her everything was legitimate, who'd known exactly which buttons to push. Danny's medical needs, the salary amount, the benefits package designed perfectly to be irresistible. I need to tell Dante. And say what? That you think his HR director of 8 years is stealing from him based on metadata and speculation? He'll want proof. Hard evidence. Otherwise, you're just making accusations that could get you killed if you're wrong. Nora stood up, started pacing. Then we get proof. We catch her in the act. How? Set a trap. If she's using my credentials to process fraudulent transactions, we create an opportunity too good to resist. A large transfer that she can't ignore. Then we watch and see if she takes the bait. Sophia considered this, her expression calculating. It could work, but it's risky. If she suspects a trap, she'll disappear and we'll have nothing. And if we're wrong about her, we've just wasted time we don't have. You have a better idea? No. But if we do this, we need to move fast. Dante wants answers in 13 days. We need proof before then, or we're both on his list of suspects. They spent the next 6 hours planning, created a fake transaction, $200,000 scheduled to process through Leon's terminal on Tuesday night, ostensibly for a port shipment that didn't exist. Built it to look legitimate enough to pass casual inspection, but flagged it in the system as requiring executive approval. If Margaret was monitoring Nora's activity like the access log suggested, she'd see the opportunity. And if she took it, they'd have her. One problem, Sophia said as they finalized the trap. Even if she diverts the money, we need to catch her actually accessing the system. Digital logs can be altered or explained away. We need visual confirmation. Someone needs to be physically at the terminal when the transaction processes. I'll do it. Nora's voice was steady despite the fear churning in her gut. It's my credentials being used. I should be there. It could be dangerous. If Margaret realizes what's happening, if she has backup, if this goes wrong in any of 100 ways, I don't care. This is my life she's destroying. I'm not letting her get away with it. Sophia nodded slowly. Okay, Tuesday night. I'll monitor from here, track the transaction in real time. You be at Leone's starting at 11 p.m. The transfer is scheduled for 11:45. If she takes the bait, she'll access the system sometime between 11:30 and midnight to redirect the funds. And if she doesn't show? Then we're wrong about everything, and we're back to square one with less time to find the real thief. Tuesday came too fast. Nora went through the motions of work, coordinating deliveries, reviewing schedules, maintaining the facade of normalcy, while her nerves wound tighter with each passing hour. She called Danny during lunch. Hey, how's school? Good. We got our test results back in chemistry. I got a 93. Pride in his voice, the sound of a kid whose health wasn't dominating every thought anymore. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. Thanks. Hey, you sound weird. Everything okay? Just tired. Long day. I might be working late tonight, so don't wait up. Again? You've been working late a lot lately. I know. I'm sorry. But the hours are part of the job. It won't always be like this. Lies built on lies. She'd become fluent in them over the past 3 months. They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Nora sat in her office staring at nothing, trying to prepare mentally for what was coming. If this worked, she'd have proof that Margaret was the thief. She'd be cleared of suspicion. Danny would be safe. And if it didn't work, she had 11 days left to find answers before Dante started making examples. Evening came. Nora left the downtown office at 6, drove to Leon's and told the closing manager she'd handle lockup tonight. She needed to work on some administrative tasks. The staff filtered out by 10:30, the last server waving goodbye as she locked the front door behind her. Silence settled over the restaurant like a physical weight. Nora went to her office, pulled up the terminal access interface, and waited. Her phone sat on the desk beside her, a direct line to Sophia, who was monitoring everything from downtown. 11:15 p.m. Nothing yet. 11:30 p.m. The restaurant creaked and settled around her, normal building sounds that felt ominous in the darkness. 11:40 p.m. 5 minutes until the scheduled transaction. Her phone buzzed. Text from Sophia. Transaction is processing. Stand by. Nora's heart rate kicked up. She watched the terminal screen, waiting for any sign of irregularity, any indication that someone was accessing the system remotely. 11:43 p.m. The screen flickered. A secondary window opened. System override, administrative access. Someone was in the network, viewing the transaction details, accessing the routing protocols. Nora's hands shook as she grabbed her phone, opened the camera app, started recording the screen. Evidence. She needed documentation of what was happening. The override commands came fast now. The transaction amount stayed the same, but the destination account changed. $200,000 being redirected from the central processing account to a numbered offshore account that didn't appear in any official Moretti Holdings records. The theft happening in real time right in front of her. Her phone buzzed. Sophia, I see it. Recording everything on my end, but we need confirmation of who's accessing. Can you trace the IP? Nora pulled up the system logs, found the access entry, clicked through to the connection details. The IP address resolved to an internal Moretti Holdings address. Executive level access, office 1608, Margaret Chen's office. Her phone. It's her. Margaret. Office 1608, I have the IP. Sophia. That's not enough. IP could be spoofed. Access could be compromised. We need physical confirmation. You need to go there, now. Nora stared at the message. The downtown office was 20 minutes away. By the time she got there, the transaction would be complete. Margaret could be gone. But Sophia was right. Digital evidence could be explained away. They needed to catch Margaret physically at her computer, actively stealing. Needed proof that couldn't be disputed or deflected. Nora grabbed her keys and ran. The drive downtown took 18 minutes, traffic lights be damned. She parked in the Moretti Holdings garage at 12:02 a.m. Took the elevator to the 16th floor, her pulse hammering in her throat. The executive level was dark, illuminated only by emergency lighting and the glow from computer monitors in offices where people had left their systems running. Nora moved down the corridor toward Office 1608, every footstep too loud, too obvious. Light spilled from under Margaret's door. Nora pulled out her phone, set it to record video, and approached slowly. The door was closed, but not locked. Through the frosted glass she could see movement, a silhouette at the desk, illuminated by monitor glow. She pushed the door open. Margaret Chen looked up from her computer, her expression cycling through surprise, calculation, and cold resignation in the space of 2 seconds. Nora, I didn't expect you to figure it out this fast. Nora kept her phone pointed at Margaret, recording everything. The transaction, the offshore account, the $500,000. It's all you. Very good. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Margaret's voice was calm, almost admiring. I really did think you'd make the perfect fall guy. Desperate waitress with a sick brother, no criminal sophistication, obvious motive. When this operation gets busted, you were going to take all the blame while I disappeared with enough money to retire somewhere beautiful. Why? You've been with the company for 8 years. Dante trusted you. Dante uses people. Everyone who works for him is just a tool, a resource to be exploited until they break or become inconvenient. I've watched him destroy lives for over 8 years. I've processed the paperwork when people disappear. I've seen what he does to anyone who crosses him. Margaret stood up from her desk, her posture relaxed despite being caught. So I decided to take my compensation directly. A retirement fund built from skim transactions that he'd never notice until it was too late. He noticed. He knows someone is stealing. He's giving me 2 weeks to find out who. I know. That's why I'm accelerating the timeline. Margaret gestured to her computer screen. That transaction you just witnessed, that's the last one. I'm taking the money and disappearing tonight. By morning, I'll be on a plane to a country with no extradition treaty. By the time Dante figures out what happened, I'll be gone. I have proof. Video of you at your computer during the theft. System logs showing your access. You're not disappearing. You're going to Dante and confessing. Margaret laughed, genuine amusement in the sound. You think I'm afraid of Dante? I have 8 years of his secrets on encrypted drives. Every illegal transaction, every criminal operation, every person who's disappeared on his orders. If he comes after me, that information goes straight to the FBI. I have leverage. You don't. I have evidence of you stealing $500,000 from a man who kills people for smaller offenses. Evidence you can't use without admitting your own complicity. You're as deep in this operation as I am, Nora. You've been processing illegal transactions for 3 months. You've coordinated money laundering across 5 locations. You think the FBI will care that you didn't know what you were doing? You're guilty by participation. Margaret started packing items from her desk into a bag, laptop, external drives, files. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to leave. You're going to delete that video and forget this conversation ever happened. And when Dante asks for your report, you're going to tell him you couldn't find the thief. He'll assume it was an outside hack, tighten security, and move on. Everyone wins. Except he'll make examples. He said so. Everyone with terminal access becomes suspect. That includes people who've done nothing wrong except work for him. Not my problem anymore, I'm out. Margaret zipped her bag closed, grabbed her coat. I'd apologize for setting you up, but honestly, you made it easy. The moment you returned that money to Dante, you painted a target on yourself. He saw someone he could manipulate, and he was right. You're still trying to do the right thing in a world where there is no right thing. That's why you'll never survive this life. She moved toward the door. Nora stepped in front of it, blocking her path. You're not leaving. Move. No. Margaret's expression hardened. I don't want to hurt you, but I will if you make me. Step aside. I can't let you run. Too many people will suffer because you're a coward who couldn't stand up to Dante when it mattered. I'm not a coward. I'm a survivor. There's a difference. Margaret set down her bag. Last chance. Move or I move you. Nora's hands clenched into fists. She'd never been in a real fight in her life. Never thrown a punch. Never had to physically defend anything except Danny from bullies when they were kids. But she'd also never been this angry. Never felt rage this pure and focused. Make me, she said. Margaret moved fast. Professional training, something Nora recognized too late as self-defense expertise. A quick jab to Nora's solar plexus that knocked the air from her lungs. Nora stumbled back, gasping, her phone clattering to the floor. Margaret grabbed her bag and pushed past, heading for the door. Nora recovered enough to lunge after her, catching Margaret's arm, pulling her back. They crashed into the desk together, monitors sliding, files scattering. Margaret twisted, drove an elbow into Nora's ribs. Pain exploded bright and sharp, but Nora didn't let go. They grappled, neither with real fighting skills, just desperation and fury driving clumsy blows. Nora got her hands in Margaret's hair, yanked hard. Margaret screamed, drove her knee into Nora's stomach. They separated, both breathing hard, both bleeding from small cuts. You stupid bitch, Margaret panted. You can't win this. Even if you stop me from leaving, Dante will know you couldn't deliver answers. He'll kill you anyway. Maybe, but at least you won't get away with it. They circled each other in the small office, predator and prey unable to tell which was which. Nora's ribs screamed with every breath. Her stomach cramped where Margaret's knee had connected. But adrenaline kept her moving, kept her focused. Margaret feinted left, then dove right, trying to get past Nora to the door. Nora caught her mid-dive, and they both went down hard, crashing into the filing cabinet. The impact jarred Nora's shoulder, sent white-hot pain radiating down her arm. Margaret scrambled to her feet first, kicked Nora in the side. Ribs already bruised screamed in protest. Nora curled around the pain, vision blurring. "Stay down," Margaret commanded, grabbing her bag again. "This is over." Nora's hand found her phone on the floor, the video still recording. She grabbed it, held it up. "I got all of it. The confession, the theft, everything. You can run, but this goes to Dante either way." Margaret froze, calculating. "Delete it." No. Delete it, or I'll beat you unconscious and take the phone myself. Try. Margaret dropped her bag and advanced. Nora struggled to her feet, pain radiating from a dozen points. They were both exhausted now, both injured, both running on fury and desperation. The office door burst open. Sophia stood there with two security guards, her expression ice-cold professional. That's enough. Both of you stand down. Margaret's face went through rapid calculations: fight, flight, surrender. She chose flight, trying to push past Sophia toward the hallway. One of the security guards caught her easily, professional restraint technique that had Margaret face down on the floor in seconds, her hands being zip-tied behind her back. You set me up, Margaret spat toward Nora. This whole thing was a trap. You set yourself up, Sophia said coldly. The moment you got greedy, the moment you thought you could steal from Dante Moretti and walk away. She looked at Nora, saw the injuries, the way she was favoring her ribs. You okay? I've been better. You got it? The confession? Nora held up her phone, the video still recording. All of it. Good. Dante's going to want to see that. Sophia nodded to the guards. Take her to the holding room. Nobody speaks to her except Mr. Moretti. And somebody call medical. Ms. Quinn needs attention. The guards hauled Margaret to her feet, started dragging her toward the door. She looked back at Nora, her expression a mix of rage and something almost like respect. You won, she said. But you're still trapped. Dante still owns you. This changes nothing except who takes the fall. At least it's not me, Nora said quietly. They took Margaret away. Sophia helped Nora sit down in a chair, started examining her injuries with gentle efficiency. You're going to have spectacular bruises. Ribs might be cracked. That shoulder needs ice. I'm fine. You're not fine. You just got in a fight with a woman who has actual combat training and somehow won through sheer stubborn refusal to stay down. Sophia's expression softened microscopically. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Dante's on his way. He was monitoring the whole thing remotely, saw everything. Nora's stomach clenched. Is that good or bad? Depends on his mood. You solved his problem. Identified the thief, got her confession on video, prevented her from escaping with his money. That's all positive. But you also destroyed his HR director, created a major operational disruption, and forced him to acknowledge that someone he trusted for 8 years was stealing from him. Dante doesn't like being made to look foolish. I didn't have a choice. I know, but that might not matter. They sat in silence, Nora's breathing shallow to minimize rib pain, waiting for the man who controlled their fates to arrive and pass judgment. 15 minutes later, Dante walked into Margaret's office. He surveyed the damage, overturned furniture, scattered files, the blood on the floor from Nora's split lip. His expression was unreadable. Show me the video. Nora handed him her phone. He watched the recording from start to finish, his face carved from stone, showing nothing. When it ended, he replayed Margaret's confession twice more, his jaw working. She was right about one thing, he said finally. You made it easy. The moment you returned that money, you became a tool I could use. Someone honest enough to seem trustworthy, but desperate enough to be controlled. He looked at Nora directly. I did use you. That part is true. But I also underestimated you. I thought you'd be passive, compliant, a manager who followed orders and didn't ask questions. Instead, you're sitting here bleeding because you refused to let a thief escape, even though letting her go would have been easier and safer for you personally. I couldn't let her frame me for crimes she committed. You could have. Most people would have. Taken the fall, done the time, protected themselves by cooperating with whoever offered the best deal. Dante handed back her phone. But you chose to fight instead, chose to stand your ground even when outmatched. That tells me something important about who you are. What does it tell you? That you're more valuable than I realized, and more dangerous. He pulled out his own phone, made a call. Medical to the 16th floor, Ms. Quinn needs treatment. He hung up. You're getting checked out properly. Ribs, shoulder, full assessment. Company medical will handle it. Take tomorrow off. Come back Friday and we'll discuss your future with the organization. What about Margaret? Margaret gets what all thieves get. I'll handle it personally. His expression went cold in a way that made Nora's blood run colder. By tomorrow morning, she won't be a problem for anyone ever again. The casual way he said it, the absolute certainty of violence delivered without passion, reminded Nora exactly who she was dealing with. This wasn't a boss. This was a killer who happened to own restaurants. Medical arrived, a professional team that asked no questions about how Nora had gotten injured in an executive office at 1 a.m. They examined her ribs, bruised but not broken, wrapped them, iced her shoulder, gave her painkillers that she pocketed instead of taking. She needed to be clear-headed. Dante watched the whole process, then dismissed everyone except Sophia and Nora. "One more thing before you go," he said when they were alone. "The situation with Margaret, it exposed a vulnerability in my organization. Someone I trusted betrayed me. Someone with access to sensitive systems used that access to steal. I can't afford to let that happen again." "I understand," Nora said carefully, "which means changes, restructuring, new protocols, and new people in key positions." He looked at her with eyes that calculated worth the way a jeweler appraised stones. "Margaret's position is now vacant. Director of Human Resources. Salary is $180,000 annually. Full executive benefits. Direct report to me. The job is yours if you want it." Nora felt the words hit like a physical blow. "I'm not qualified for that position. Neither was Margaret when I hired her 8 years ago. She learned. You'll learn. And more importantly, you've proven something she never did. You're willing to bleed to protect this organization's interests. That's worth more than any HR certification. I protected my own interests. I didn't want to take the fall for her crimes. Same thing from where I'm standing. Your interests align with mine. You want stability, security, Danny's medical coverage. I want loyal people in critical positions. This is how we both get what we need." Sophia had gone very still beside her, watching the exchange with careful attention. Nora's mind raced through implications. Director of Human Resources. Executive level. Deep enough into the organization that extraction would be impossible, but also enough money, enough security to ensure Danny never had to worry about medication costs again. The trap getting tighter with every promotion. "I need time to think about it," Nora said. "You have until Friday. Come to my office at 10 a.m. with your answer." Dante headed for the door, then paused. "And Nora, you did good work tonight. Whatever you decide about the promotion, know that I'm impressed. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. That's not a compliment I give often." He left. Sophia exhaled slowly once he was gone. "Holy shit." "Yeah. He just offered you Margaret's job. The woman whose confession you recorded 6 hours ago. The woman he's going to kill for stealing from him." "I know. And you're actually considering taking it." "I don't know what I'm doing." Nora's hands were shaking now, adrenaline crash hitting hard. "I just wanted to prove I wasn't the thief. I wanted to protect Danny. I didn't want—" Her voice broke. "I didn't want any of this." Sophia put a hand on her shoulder, careful of the injuries. "But you have it anyway. And now you choose what happens next. You can walk away, try to find another life somewhere. Or you can go deeper, take the promotion, become exactly what Dante is trying to make you. What would you do?" "I'd take the job. Because leaving means losing everything you've built. Leaving means Danny loses his medical coverage. You lose your salary, and Dante might decide you know too much to be allowed to just walk away." Sophia's voice was quiet but firm. "There's no good choice here. There's only survive or don't. And survival means staying in this world and making it work for you however you can." Nora knew she was right. Knew the trap had closed months ago, had maybe closed the moment she'd walked into that hospital to return an envelope of cash. Every choice since then had just been walking deeper into the cage while pretending she still had freedom. "Go home," Sophia said. "Rest. Think about it. But Nora, whatever you decide, make sure you can live with it. Because once you take that executive position, there's no coming back from what you'll become." Nora drove home as the sun started rising, her body aching from the fight, her mind churning through impossible choices. She arrived at the apartment to find Danny already awake, making breakfast, humming something cheerful. He looked up when she walked in, saw the bandaging, the bruises starting to darken on her face, and his expression shifted to immediate alarm. "What happened to you?" "Accident at work? Nothing serious? I'm fine." "You don't look fine. You look like you got in a fight. Just some furniture that fell wrong during inventory. Really, I'm okay." The lies came easier every time, smoother, more practiced. Danny studied her face, clearly not believing but also not pushing. You're working too hard. These hours are killing you. The hours pay for everything we need, including your medication, including this apartment, including the fact that you're healthy enough to make breakfast instead of sleeping until noon because your lungs aren't working." The words came out harsher than she'd intended. Danny flinched. "I'm sorry," Nora said quickly. "I'm just tired. It was a long night. I didn't mean—" "It's okay. I know you're doing this for me. For us." Danny came over, hugged her carefully, avoiding the obvious injuries. "I just wish it didn't cost you so much." Nora closed her eyes, breathing in the familiar scent of him. Her little brother who wasn't so little anymore, who was healthy and strong and had a future because she'd sold pieces of herself to buy it. "It's worth it," she whispered. "You're worth it." "Am I? Worth you getting hurt? Worth you working for people who—" He stopped. "You're working for Dante Moretti. I looked him up. I know what kind of person he is, what kind of things his companies are connected to." Nora pulled back, looked at him. "Danny, I'm not stupid, Nora. I know a legitimate restaurant company doesn't pay regional managers $90,000. I know there's something else going on. I just—" His voice cracked. "I just don't know how deep you are in it, and that scares me. I'm handling it." "Are you? Because you look like you barely survived whatever happened last night, and I can't—" Tears in his eyes now. "I can't lose you. You're all I have. If something happens to you because of this job, nothing is going to happen to me. I promise." "You can't promise that. Not with people like Moretti." Danny wiped his eyes angrily. "Maybe we should leave. Pack up, move somewhere else, start over. We could go to a different city, find new jobs, get by somehow." "On what money? With what insurance for your medication?" "Danny, we're barely staying afloat even with this salary. If we run, we lose everything. And there's no guarantee we'd be safer somewhere else. So we're trapped. We're surviving. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've traded one kind of desperate poverty for another. At least before we were poor but clean. Now we have money, but—" He gestured at her injuries. "But this—" Nora had no answer for that. Because he was right. They'd traded visible desperation for hidden corruption. Traded immediate crisis for long-term compromise. "I'm being offered a promotion," she heard herself say. "Director of Human Resources, executive position, nearly double my current salary, better benefits, more security." Danny stared at her. "And you're considering taking it?" "I don't know yet." "Yes, you do. You're going to take it, because you always choose security over safety. You always choose survival over freedom." His voice was flat now, emotionless. "Just promise me one thing. Promise me that when this all comes crashing down, because it will eventually, you'll remember I told you to walk away. I told you it wasn't worth it." He went to his room and closed the door. Nora stood alone in the kitchen, her brother's words echoing in her head, and felt something break inside her chest. Not the clean break of bone snapping, the slower fracture of something load-bearing that had been carrying too much weight for too long. She made coffee she didn't drink. She sat on the couch staring at nothing. She tried to imagine a version of this where everyone came out okay. The imagination failed. Friday morning came too fast. Nora, dressed in her best suit, covered the worst of the bruising with makeup and drove downtown to Moretti Holdings. Her ribs still ached with every breath. Her shoulder throbbed. But she walked into the building with her head up and her spine straight because showing weakness in this world meant dying. Dante's office, 10 a.m. His assistant waved her through immediately. He sat behind his desk, the city spread out behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows, a king surveying his kingdom of glass and steel and dirty money. "Ms. Quinn, how are you feeling?" "Sore, but functional." "Good. Have you made your decision about the position?" Nora looked at him, this man who'd orchestrated her entire life for the past 4 months, who'd tested and used and promoted her, who turned her from a waitress into a criminal and was now offering to make her an executive. She thought about Danny at home, healthy but disappointed, about Margaret Chen, who'd made the same choices Nora was making now and ended up dead for them, about the trap that kept getting tighter no matter which direction she moved. "I'll take the job," she said. Her voice didn't shake. "Small victory." Dante smiled. "Excellent. You start Monday. Margaret's office is being cleared out as we speak. I'll have HR, well, I'll have Sophia handle your transition paperwork until we hire a new HR manager to report to you. Salary effective immediately. Full executive benefits. Welcome to the leadership team. Thank you. One more thing. Dante's expression shifted into something harder. This position comes with additional responsibilities beyond standard HR functions. You'll be handling personnel issues that require discretion, hiring for sensitive positions, managing employee situations that can't be resolved through normal channels. I need someone I can trust in that role. Someone who's proven they'll protect the organization's interest even when it's difficult or dangerous. Are you prepared for that? Nora understood what he was really asking. Would she be complicit in whatever darkness came next? Would she help hide bodies and facilitate crimes and become the kind of person who enabled evil while pretending her hands stayed clean? Would she surrender the last piece of herself that still believed in doing the right thing? Yes, she said. I'm prepared. Good. Then we have an understanding. Dante stood, extended his hand. To your future with Moretti Holdings. Nora shook his hand, felt his fingers close around hers like a contract being signed in flesh, and knew with absolute certainty that she'd just made a deal that would cost her everything she'd once been in exchange for the illusion of security for the one person she loved. The woman who'd driven across the city to return $1,000 was gone. In her place stood someone else, someone harder, someone capable of shaking hands with a killer and calling it a career opportunity. Someone Nora Quinn no longer recognized in mirrors, but someone who could keep her brother alive. And in the end, that was the only calculation that mattered. To the future, she echoed, and felt the trap lock shut with the finality of prison doors closing. There was no escape now. There was only forward, into whatever darkness waited. And Nora Quinn walked into it with her eyes open and her soul already calculating the cost. 6 months as Director of Human Resources, and Nora Quinn had learned to recognize the sound of someone about to die. It was in the silence first. The way conversation stopped when certain names came up. The way Dante's voice went flat when discussing personnel issues that required discretion. The polite corporate euphemisms that meant a person would be disappeared by morning, terminated, relocated, transitioned out of the organization. She'd signed off on 17 such terminations in 6 months. 17 people whose personnel files she'd closed with clinical efficiency, noting the date and reason for departure in language that revealed nothing. 17 ghosts that haunted the edges of her sleep when exhaustion finally dragged her under around 3 a.m. most nights. The executive office on the 17th floor had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Nora stood there most mornings watching shipping containers arrive, knowing some carried legitimate cargo and others carried things she'd learned not to ask about. The view was beautiful. The knowledge of what it represented made her stomach turn. But she showed up every day, processed payroll, managed benefits, hired new employees with the same practiced efficiency Margaret Chen had once used to recruit her. And when Dante called with special requests, hire this person without standard background checks, create a personnel file that wouldn't withstand scrutiny, make someone disappear from the system entirely, she did it without question, because Danny was healthy, because the apartment had heat and food and security, because survival meant compromise, and compromise meant becoming someone she no longer recognized. Thursday morning, week 26, her assistant buzzed. "Mr. Moretti on line 1. Nora picked up. "Good morning." "My office, 10 minutes. We have a situation." His voice carried the particular flatness that meant someone was about to become a ghost. She saved her work, straightened her suit, designer now, expensive fabric that hung perfectly because she could afford tailors, and took the elevator up 2 floors. Dante's office was occupied. Sophia sat in one of the chairs across from his desk, her expression carved from ice. 2 security guards stood by the door, and in the 3rd chair sat a man Nora didn't recognize. Mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of blank professional demeanor that screamed federal agent. "Miss Quinn," Dante gestured to the empty chair beside Sophia. "Sit. We need to discuss your future with this organization." Nora's pulse spiked. She sat, keeping her expression neutral, her hands steady in her lap. "What's this about?" "This is Special Agent Robert Chen, FBI." Dante's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. "He's been investigating Moretti Holdings for the past 8 months. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy. The usual accusations, and this morning, he presented me with some very interesting evidence. Agent Chen pulled a folder from his briefcase, slid it across the desk toward Nora. Open it. Nora's hands moved automatically, opening the folder. Inside were photographs, surveillance images of her entering Lyon's late at night, screenshots of terminal access logs, financial records showing the transactions she'd coordinated, and at the bottom, a transcript of her conversation with Margaret Chen the night of the fight. Every word documented, recorded, preserved. "We've been watching you for 6 months," Agent Chen said. "Since you took over as HR director. We know about the money laundering. We know about the network terminals. We know you've been coordinating illegal transactions across 5 restaurant locations. We have enough evidence to charge you with conspiracy, money laundering, and racketeering. You're looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison." The words hit like physical blows. Nora forced herself to breathe, to think clearly through the panic. "I want a lawyer." "You can have a lawyer, won't change the evidence." Agent Chen leaned forward. "But there is one way you avoid prison. One way you walk away from this with immunity instead of a sentence." Here it was, the real trap, the final turn of the screw. "You want me to testify against Dante? We want you to cooperate fully with our investigation. Provide documentation, testify to what you've witnessed, help us build an airtight case against Moretti Holdings and everyone involved in the criminal enterprise." Agent Chen's expression was professionally neutral. In exchange, full immunity, witness protection if necessary, a chance to start over somewhere clean. Nora looked at Dante. His expression was unreadable, but she could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was testing her. This whole scene was a test. "And if I refuse, then we arrest you right now. You go into federal custody, get arraigned, and spend the next year awaiting trial before spending the next 15 in prison. Your brother Danny, who's currently a senior at Lincoln High, applying to colleges, becomes a ward of the state. His medical coverage disappears. His medications stop. Everything you've sacrificed for ends because you chose loyalty to a criminal over protecting your family. The threat was surgical, precise, designed to hit exactly where it would hurt most." Nora looked at Sophia, who sat frozen, watching this play out with the careful attention of someone trying to determine which way the knife would fall. "How long do I have to decide?" Nora asked. 72 hours. After that, the arrest warrant gets executed and the offer disappears." Agent Chen stood. "Think carefully, Ms. Quinn. You've got a chance to do the right thing here, to walk away clean. Don't waste it on misplaced loyalty to a man who'll dispose of you the moment you become inconvenient." He left his business card on Dante's desk and walked out, the security guards escorting him. The office fell into silence. Nora sat perfectly still, her mind racing through implications and consequences. This was it. The moment everything crystallized. Cooperate with the FBI and destroy Dante's empire while saving herself and Danny, or refuse and go to prison while Dante walked free. Except something felt wrong about the whole scene. The timing, the theatrical presentation, the way Dante sat watching her with that calculating expression instead of the rage she'd expect from someone whose HR director was being flipped by federal agents. "That wasn't a real FBI agent," Nora said quietly. Dante's expression shifted microscopically. "What makes you say that?" "Because if it was real, you wouldn't have let him walk out of here. You would have had lawyers in this room before he finished his first sentence. You wouldn't have let me hear any of it without counsel present." Nora looked at him directly. "This is another test. You're trying to see if I'll stay loyal or run the moment the pressure gets real." Silence stretched between them. Then Dante smiled, genuine amusement breaking through his usual control. "Sophia said you'd figure it out. I didn't believe her." He leaned back in his chair. "Robert Chen is not FBI. He's a security consultant I hired to present you with a very convincing offer. The evidence in that folder is real, all of it documenting your actual activities over the past 6 months. The threat of arrest was fabricated, but the choice was genuine." "Why?" Nora's voice came out strained. "Why put me through this?" "Because I needed to know if you'd break under federal pressure. If the FBI actually did come after you, and they will eventually, that's inevitable in this business, would you cooperate or stay silent? Would you trade my freedom for yours?" Dante stood, walked to the window. "Margaret thought she could steal from me and disappear. She was wrong. You could testify against me and destroy everything I've built. I needed to know if you would. And if I'd said yes, if I'd agreed to cooperate with fake Agent Chen, then you would have become a real ghost instead of a hypothetical one. The words were delivered without inflection, pure fact. Loyalty is the only currency that matters in this organization. I can't afford people who'll turn on me when the stakes get high. Nora felt rage building in her chest, hot and sharp. So you terrorized me, threatened my brother's safety, made me think I was going to prison, all to test my loyalty? Yes. That's insane. That's survival. In my world, you trust no one until they've proven themselves under pressure. You passed. Congratulations. Dante turned back to face her. But there's more. The test wasn't just about loyalty, it was about choice. When presented with a clean exit, immunity, witness protection, a fresh start, you immediately looked for the trap instead of taking the offer. That tells me something important. What does it tell you? That you fully accepted what you've become. 6 months ago, you would have jumped at that offer. You would have seen it as salvation, a chance to escape this life and go back to being the person you were. But you didn't. You stayed in your chair, calculated the angles, and looked for my agenda instead of grabbing the lifeline. You're not that desperate waitress anymore. You're one of us now. The words landed like a death sentence. Because he was right. The Nora Quinn who'd returned $1,000 wouldn't have hesitated. She would have taken the immunity deal and run. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who thought like a criminal, who calculated survival in terms of leverage and loyalty instead of right and wrong. I hate you, Nora said quietly, for what you've turned me into. I didn't turn you into anything. I just created conditions where your true nature could emerge. The capacity for this was always in you, the ability to make hard choices, to prioritize survival over morality, to become whatever you needed to be to protect your brother. I just gave you a stage to perform on. Sophia had remained silent through all of this, but now she spoke.